Call to order the meeting of Lacey, City of Lacey Commission on Equity, Monday, October 22nd, 5:30. I'd like to go through the roll call. I am here. I see Vice Chair Kim Sauer here. Cliff Brown is with us. Nikita Hart. Jonathan Hedgewood is at another meeting, has been excused. Elma Jackson is here. Our new Lacey Youth Council member, Kieran Powell, is here. And then we have a vacant position now. Kristen Stolberg has resigned within the last month. We also appreciate all her work that she did with us. Just some changes in her life situation. So we do have a quorum. I'd like to read the land acknowledgement. We, the City of Lacey, are on the ancestral land of the tribal people of the Treaty of Medicine Creek, including the Nisqually Indian tribe and the Squaxin Island tribe. We acknowledge and remember those tribal people not recognized today who have been absorbed or relocated into other tribes for survival. We recognize the ancestors, their descendants who are still with us. We recognize and respect the tribal people of Treaty of Medicine Creek as the traditional stewards of this land, which since time immemorial, and their role today in taking care of these lands in perpetuity. We recognize and have the responsibility to call attention to the histories of dispossession, forced removal, and abridged treaty rights that allowed our nation, state, city to develop as we have today. We recommend that community members read the Medicine Creek Treaty of 1854. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda previous meeting minute and the consent items.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. On the second.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So carried. We had one public comment came via email. We have any on the line?
Chair, no one signed up to provide public comment.
Okay, and we don't have anyone in the house. Thank you. Kim, did you have a inspiration?
Yeah.
For us? Okay, like to set the tone.
So last October 10th was the first time I could read Nobel Prize awarded literature in Korean. I thought I'd like to introduce Han Gang, the Korean author who won the Nobel Prize this year. And her message, of course, because we're facing so much violence around the world, war, obviously. And so I happened to read one of her novel, The Vegetarian. I don't know if anyone have read a couple of years ago and remember being awed by it. I mean, this is before Nobel Prize. It was sort of extreme and bizarre, but then violence is like that. I think no other way to describe it, in my opinion. So just like the main character in The Vegetarian, we can't just live off by sunlight only, no meat or no food altogether. So Han Gang has many books, including like Human X, We Do Not Part, the White Book, Bleak Lessons, and those are just few. And she really describes about human violence and the historic traumas. Matt Marm of the Swedish Academy said that Han was receiving the honor for her intense poetic prose that confronts historical traumas and expose the fragility of human life. And she said that it was like two unsolvable riddles imprinted on her mind. How can humans be so violent? And how can humans be so sublime? So when she says she writes novels, she finds herself always returning that theme of what it means to be human. And so I wanted to throw that out to you. Have you think about what it means to be human for you? Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Can I have a volunteer for next month's inspirational?
I'll do it.
Commissioner Hart, thank you. Right, the business items, the first one is the Black Home Initiative. We have been asked to listen to this and possibly make a recommendation for the city council to also study this and possibly partner with this group. So, Jennifer? Yeah, well, Jennifer Adams is our housing person. So would you like to start off and then?
I would love to. Thank you so much, Amy. So anyways, thank you. It's really nice to be back. It's been just a little bit. I haven't been back since we talked about middle housing for the first time. So it's great to see everybody here. Nice to see a new and a young face as well. So thank you for being here. So we do have the pleasure this evening of hearing from Marty Kustra, who is director of the Black Homeowner Initiative. And it's really great that he's here because, quite frankly, he can do a much better job of informing you than I could. But that said, I do want to share just a very brief 1-minute introduction, and then we're going to let Marty take it away from there. So just share a few thoughts with you. Between 2021 and 2022, the Washington State Legislature provided funding and tasked the Department of Commerce to convene the Home Ownership Disparities Work Group. The purpose of the group was to address the significant home ownership gap between Black, Indigenous, people of color, and white households. The group consisted of 32 stakeholders with diverse housing expertise to develop a series of recommendations to reduce such disparities. Their work included proposals for increasing funding for affordable homeownership programs, revising policies to make them more accessible to our BIPOC communities, and ensure that housing assistance targets historically marginalized populations. Their findings included 27 actionable recommendations for immediate and long-term policy changes to promote equitable homeownership opportunities. Around the same time, the Black Home Initiative established roots in the greater Seattle region with a focus and a mission to increase home ownership opportunity for low and moderate income Black homeowners, with aspirations to provide avenues for home ownership for 1,500 households within the next 5-year period. The BHI uses a 3-pronged approach, including growing the pool of available homes for purchase, supporting Black households who want to buy a home and obtain a mortgage, and improving collaboration among public, private, and nonprofit organizations to create a more efficient and effective ecosystem for Black home ownership. The BHI seeks to align themselves in a network that will produce a joint impact and have the ability for an even greater impact to right the wrongs of the past and the present and ensure equitable access to opportunity for Black households in the future, compared to individual efforts that have been seen in recent years. This past summer, a growing interest among various groups and agencies here in Thurston County prompted conversations with the BHI to learn more about their work and opportunities to become involved. Over several months and collaborative meetings among agencies, including the Thurston County Realtors Association, the Thurston Asset Building Coalition, and the South Puget Sound Habitat for Humanity, and then also local jurisdictions supporting the Thurston County Regional Housing Council, all had an interest and that interest grew to join the network. So on August 29th of this year, this local cohort issued a letter to the BHI requesting an expansion of their efforts to also now include Thurston County, the Thurston County region. The letter emphasized areas of proposed contributions, such as serving on project teams and promoting outreach and advocacy to carry forth the initiative here in the Thurston County region. Beyond the RHC and others, intent to partner, individual jurisdictions such as Lacey also have an additional opportunity to provide ongoing support within our local community. The City of Lacey elected this evening to bring this opportunity to the Commission on Equity to assist in learning more about the BHI and provide potential city participation as a partner. Tonight, the city is requesting from you that the Commission learn and engage with the BHI and provide broad feedback to the city. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome Marty Kustra, Project Manager for Civic Commons and the Black Home Initiative, here to present further information. Thanks, you guys.
Well, thank you, and it's great to be here. Can you hear me? All right, super. I'm going to bring up a PowerPoint presentation here to show you. My apologies for not being able to be there with you in person, but as we know nowadays, sometimes this has to do. So I will go through these slides fairly quickly, and then we can pause near the end for some questions, or if you do want to raise a question in the immediate, feel free to do that. I probably won't see you, but just interrupt me. That's fine. So here we go. Really appreciate the setup and what's happening with the excitement in Thurston County around this work. I have been doing this work now for Civic Commons. I'll tell you a little bit more about Civic Commons since about June or July of 2021, and excited to help share the good news. So how did this whole thing happen? Just in brief, back in March of 2021, a group of bankers responded to a memo I had written actually in July of 2020 to the homeownership affinity group of the Housing Development Consortium, encouraging there to be more done specifically around addressing the disparities in home ownership. It was the bankers that actually grabbed a hold of that and decided to do something. And so in March, later part of the month, we had 125 people join us on Zoom, of course, during the pandemic, and we began shaping this 7-point plan for how we would increase Black home ownership in the region. Along about the same time, the Center for Community Investment, a national intermediary, approached my boss, Michael Brown, and asked if we would be interested in joining 4 other cities in a national effort to increase housing and equity. We saw the opportunity at that point to bring these 2 efforts together, and so by the end of 2022, we were finally able to launch formally what's known now as BHI, or the Black Home Initiative. Earlier in 22, we also established the core and full teams of folks to help drive the work. And in May of 23, a major piece of legislation was signed in the state following the homeownership disparity study that Jennifer mentioned, was called the Covenant Homeownership Account and Act, and I'll tell you more about that as we proceed. But eventually, in the end of the year, November, we launched our first granting program for capacity building for nonprofits. It's housed at the Greater Tacoma Community Foundation. It's known as the Black Homeownership Legacy Fund. And then in February of 24, we launched the Field Order 15 Fund, which is our pre-development program specifically for BIPOC developers to be able to build homeownership homes. And then finally, in July, we saw the rollout of the Covenant Homeownership Account and Program. And since then, there's been 73 homes closed with homeowners who were previously shut out of that opportunity due to discrimination. So when we look at, and I don't have stats in here for Thurston County, we'll be pulling those together. We'll talk more about that, but just in the Seattle, Tacoma, Bellevue area. And why I want to show you this slide is that in 1968, shortly after the murder of Martin Luther King Jr., the Fair Housing Act was passed. It was intended to resolve some of the discriminatory practices. Look what has happened since 1968. We're now at roughly a 16 to 17 point difference, percentage point difference in between Black household ownership and white household ownership. And so things have actually gotten worse. You can see here, the disparities as it relates to the two populations. And then, of course, this is the one that should have everybody really thinking hard about what's going on. 4 out of 10 Black Washingtonians currently have zero net worth. 4 out of 10. And so this is one of the main drivers behind the work of BHI. So what is it? Well, we're part of this national project, as I mentioned. There's 4 other cities in the country that are working on some type of housing inequity. We're basically much different in that we're doing this in more of a regional network approach, and we're focusing purely on Black homeownership as a focused goal. JP Morgan Chase provided us with some seed money to get the effort launched. Civic Commons is who I work for, is the actual convener of the network currently. And we have 3 main programs. We're an affiliate of the Seattle Foundation, but work regionally. The first is this We Belong Here initiative that feeds right into the inspiration that was shared earlier on this question of belonging, love, and justice, and how do we promote it. The second program is our scorecard for shared priority. And the third is this network weaving that we call it, which is really the focus area of the Black Home Initiative. It's an example of how we bring an ecosystem together in a different way. We have a group of core leaders who serve as the strategic advisors to help drive the work and make sure that the focus is on track and deal with any concerns or questions that come up along the way. And we are focused on, as I've said earlier, making that benefit of the asset of homeownership available to low and moderate income Black home buyers. And our ultimate impact, though, is a reduction in inequity and an increase in intergenerational Black household wealth. That is one of the primary drivers of what we're doing. We want to have at least 1,500 new first-time Black LMI buyers, low to moderate income, in place by the end of 2028, and double that to 3,000 by the end of 2033. We're doing that through this network, working on changing programs and loan structures, providing resources, and getting policy wins, of which we've had at least one major win. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, only just to share that in order to address this, even in Thurston County, we need to focus on supply, which is the light blue at the top, the demand, which is supporting buyers, which is the dark blue in the middle, and then work on the ecosystem itself, or the environment. We call it the enabling environment, to make sure that the capacity is there, that the policies are there and the resources are there, and that we're networked in such a way that we're supporting each other through the process. So all along that far right side are key areas of work that we're doing on a regular basis. So you might be thinking, this is nice. What's different about past attempts? Well, this is a brief quote by one of our core leaders. We're basically focused on doing this in such a way that we're weaving together this network. And for us, this basically looks like this murmuration on the right rather than the traditional way we think about organizations on the left. It's a matter of having that shared priority be the glue, but trying to attract as many folks as possible, organizations and resources towards that shared priority, and staying in a state of emergence. In other words, being willing to adjust and adapt as we move along, because if we all knew the answer to what needed to happen here, we should have done it a long time ago. So some of this is all work that we are making up and learning about as we go. So we have about 100 organizations now to date that have signed on to become partners with BHI. They embrace these 4 principles. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. You can read them later. But they all acknowledge the fact that we've had past discrimination that has caused this problem. We know that we need to work together with a mindset that focuses on abundance rather than scarcity, and that we agree to a sense of urgency, that we do not just wait around for someone else to do this, but we dive in, and we trust, we hope and trust as a way for us to be able to come together in a very unique and different way. We also have embraced this notion of targeted universalism, and I want to share this simply because this question comes up a lot. We are focused initially on foundational Black households, okay? And the technical definition of that is households that actually have, their roots have ancestors who have been enslaved. So they're descendants of enslaved Africans. We focus on that in very specific terms because it is the group that is the furthest from opportunity. We believe, though, that in so doing, we will create changes in the system and resources that will benefit all populations, and that we have solved it specifically for that group that is furthest from opportunity. The covenant homeownership account is a classic example of that. It has been passed based on serving those who were not allowed to buy a home due to racially restrictive covenants being allowed in the state. While the preponderance of those may be Black households, there are many other BIPOC households that too were shut out due to those covenants. So you can see that the whole effort is intentional in terms of its design and focus. There's a few things we know and have learned over the years. Homeownership is not an event, it's a journey. For some, it's longer and harder than others. If we're going to do it right, we have to do all of these things really well. How do we reach out and encourage people to actually believe that homeownership may be a possibility for them? How do we get them connected to pre-purchase counselors who can help them navigate the nuances and complexities of this work? How do we make sure we have an affordable home and an affordable loan that we put together and get people into that closing process? And then how do we support people and make sure they do not fall into the potential of foreclosure down the road? So sustaining existing Black homeowners is a key part of this work as well. We also want to make sure that we're supporting people to address any of the issues they have related to debt, income, and credit before they apply for credit. what we see is the Black households in this country being denied at excessively high rates compared to white households. So we don't want people walking into a lending institution off the street and saying, I want to apply for a loan today, and then getting that adverse action or denial letter to layer on top of all of their frustrations, trauma, and everything else. What we're really trying to do is help people become suitable and then fully ready before they apply for credit. So we reduce those denial rates. We're capturing all of them into this funnel of support who are near ready, long-term ready, midterm ready, and saying, if necessary, not now, rather than no or never. So just some quick items on progress to date. Excuse me for just a second. Okay. So one of the first things we did at the beginning of this year was completed the first ever State of Housing in Black America report, which is always done nationally on an annual basis, specifically for our market here. And we did this in partnership with the Western Washington Realtists, who are an affiliate of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And if you don't know the history of NAREB and why we have realtists and we have realtors, I would encourage you to look it up. But essentially, Black real estate professionals were not allowed to be part of the National Association of Realtors for many, many years. So they formed their own association. We've launched this legacy fund I mentioned, where we've given out over $338,000 to nonprofits to help them do work, specifically around helping identify and support buyers. And we're about to launch for the first time a debt reduction fund that we're calling the Buyer Readiness Fund to provide grants of up to $25,000 to help households that have life event debt that they cannot remediate in time to become a home buyer. And then we're really proud of this program that we set up at HomeSite, one of our partners, to create pre-development loans and grants specifically for BIPOC developers to be able to create new homeownership homes. Pre-development resources have been identified as one of the greatest barriers that new and emerging developers face in trying to get into the development process. And so we've got 11 projects right now that have gotten funding for 232 units to get the pipeline rolling. So how can we together meet the moment? Well, by changing systems that are long overdue and by working on those policies and systems. And this is the photo of the signing of the first in the nation special purpose credit program, the Covenant Homeownership Account, which will provide between $60 and $100 million a year in down payment assistance for households that were prohibited from buying due to restrictive covenants. The down payment assistance is 20% of the up to 20% of the price of the home for a total not to exceed of $150,000 in down payment assistance available across the state. So of the 73 loans so far that have been closed, a preponderance of them are in King and Pierce, but others are spread throughout counties around the state. And then, of course, we're working with our local partners in each jurisdiction to help them make sure that their policies and programs in their jurisdictions, the regulatories, all line up with the ability to increase affordable homeownership as well. And so a lot of cities are working hard on these particular recommendations. And then we need to align our resources. And so one of the things that we talk about with various jurisdictions is what access do you have to land, whether it's surplus or underutilized? What can you do on the policy and the regulatory and incentive side? How do you get through the permitting process and other things that make it easier for developers to develop? Do you have access to resources? You can become a BHI network partner. provide educational opportunities for community members, including potential home buyers, and serve on project teams. And so those are some of the ways in which we encourage people to get involved. So again, what's different? Well, this is from one of our other leaders. It's not incumbent on or possible for one group to carry out this work. To combat the centuries of discrimination against the Black community, will take a network of committed individuals, drive the work, and to see the outcomes, to achieve the outcomes we aspire to see. So that's the overview of BHI, and we're excited that the Thurston County representatives have been very active in getting to the point of requesting the expansion. We fully believe this will happen in January. The core team of BHI is working on the details and nuances of that. And I have another meeting. I'm coming to Olympia sometime in later November. So we hope to welcome all of the folks from Thurston County into this effort. Any questions?
Yes. I serve on the board for the Tacoma Urban League,
Great.
and they've been in this business and working along these lines for quite some time. Corey Oval that you have there, she's
Yep.
been very instrumental for a number of years in homeowner, preparation and training and those types of things. And they recently got like $5 million to grow their program for 2025.
Yes.
So that's one of the hubs in Tacoma in the Central District, and they are working directly with, the African American population and other BIPOC people in that area. My
Yep.
question is there a hub, a clearinghouse, or organization in Thurston County that's doing, that very core, high touch type of work?
That's a great question, and we appreciate both urban leagues in King and Pierce are, of course, very active as BHI partners, and both are represented on that core team as well. So one of the things we've been doing as we assess the opportunities in Thurston County is there are no HUD certified housing counselors that exist here. And so the first thing that we will try to figure out is how do we extend that from either Homesite, which is our NeighborWorks America Association member based out of King County, but they serve households statewide. In fact, we've also been working in Spokane with that group. And the other thing we can do is look at how do we take the partnership that exists between Habitat for Humanity and Tacoma, which is actually supporting the Tacoma Urban League with housing counselors. Tacoma Urban League doesn't have HUD certified housing counselors either, but we've extended that into the Tacoma Urban League through Habitat for Humanity in Tacoma. And so there are ways in which we can look at how we can bring that same capacity and resource to the work in Thurston County. But it will be up to the leadership of all the organizations that have stepped forward to figure out how do we centralize communication and make it all happen in reality. And so far, the city of Olympia has been putting up a lot of staff time to do that. Other questions?
I have a question.
Please.
What, in the near future, is it going to take for the housing issues in Thurston County to actually have an opportunity to be addressed as these funds flow down, as you bring on new territory? What actually has to happen? You mentioned that Thurston County has a rep that's working on this. Who is that person? Where are they housed? Is that Olympia?
At the city of Olympia, there's been one person who's been convening. She's been facilitating and convening the groups. Krista Lenson is her name. She's been helping make sure that people come together and have meetings and so on. Yes. But what else needs to happen beyond that?
Yes.
Once there's formal approval by the core team of the Black Home Initiative, then we will make sure that all of the partners that have signed on and want to be involved in Thurston County get plugged into the project teams that we have going on. There's currently 9 different project teams that are active. 3 on the supply side, 1 is involved in land, 1 on using different methods and models to increase our scaling of housing, and the other one is on financing strategies. And there's 4 that operate purely on the demand side: buyer outreach, identifying and supporting buyers; pre-purchase counseling and supports. So the money that was mentioned coming from the Community Reinvestment Program to the Tacoma Urban League. The question we keep working with is, how do we take and align those resources then with the down payment assistance that's now available, the debt reduction, and there's a lending and underwriting group that meets. And we have 3 banks. There's actually 1 bank and 2 credit unions that are about to launch special purpose credit programs that will be available also in Thurston County, that are loan programs that are changing underwriting requirements. So modifying credit score requirements, all of the things that are limiting factors. And so all of those programs are run through those project teams. And then we have others that are working on communications and policy and all of that. So we will immediately plug in whoever wants to be involved into those project teams. Most of them meet virtually, and get folks engaged. And then the work will be on the issues around supply, finding land, finding developers, and on identifying buyers and supporting them in the process.
Thank you.
I have
Thank you.
couple of questions. If we want to send this on to the city council with our recommendations, our feedback, is this presentation that you gave us the best one to like put forward to them so they can study?
Yeah, sure. And we've done this like in the city of Burien. It started with the planning commission, and then we've had representatives off the core team actually meet with the council. Those kinds of things are available, but you may certainly submit this this PowerPoint, and we have lots of other collateral and documents as well. Happy to provide whatever folks need.
And my other question is in terms of what kind of documents or, flyers or what do you have to get out to people who might benefit from this program? Something that's, sort of short and sweet and targeted,
You bet. So we have a whole array of marketing materials specifically for buyers. They are as straightforward as a simple little 1/3 fit in a trifold brochure piece to a full page, but all of them do one thing. And the same thing with the Covenant Homeownership Account flyer. They drive everybody to a toll-free number, and that's housed at the Washington Homeownership Resource Center. And that's where we coordinate all the intake and assessment from anybody who wants to buy a home. And that, excuse me, that intake and assessment then guides them to the right housing counselor or the right program. Any lender or realty professional that we actually recommend folks or promote to people, those people all have to go through a special training on trauma-informed care and understanding cultural competency and all of those pieces. And so any of those referral partners all have to go through specialized training before they're allowed to even get referrals from folks. But all of those outreach materials are readily available. We can make those available to you as well. And we certainly encourage cities and municipalities to use those resources whenever and however they're interacting with their citizens.
it seems like we have a lot of events and things where we've been putting out that information for you.
You bet. And word of mouth, you know, the hardest thing for a lot of folks is believe it's even possible based on everything they've experienced. And so, like the Tacoma Urban League and others, we're trying to train ambassadors to actually be equipped to actually encourage people they run into, because in barbershops, beauty salons, the black church, it's not just going to be as simple as, hey, here's an opportunity. Hope you can make it work. We have one lending professional, Jessica Talton. She's based out of Kent. She's signed on a good percentage of those 73 first covenant homeownership buyers by going back through her records and all of the people that they've talked to in the past who got discouraged or decided not to go through the process, bringing them all back through. And now those people are talking to their friends and relatives. And that's what's really generating the momentum.
I just would say that portion that you just discussed, I think is very important. We're talking, recommending to the city council, if there's a person or persons who can meet with and spend time with, the African Americans who are interested in purchasing a home, and help them get past the psychology of, oh, it's impossible. There's no way.
Yep.
But helping them understand, if you're paying $16, $18, $2,000 for an apartment, if you can afford that, you could potentially afford a home. But going over that bridge to
That's
help
right.
understand
Yep.
that you can, and fight the objection of, well, I don't have a down payment, I don't have this. Someone who can speak to them at a level to help them understand that it's possible and encourage them to move forward. So you mentioned, being at the Black churches and other organizations. That's where you help them to overcome the psychology of, I can potentially purchase a home, or it's a desire. So this is really possible. And here are all the resources that are going to help me to do it. In the very basics of lifestyle, the decision, your financial decision-making processes, things along those lines, people who can talk to them in plain English, plain language at a level that's encouraging to them and help them to move in that direction. I think that is very, very key. And the people who's going to do that and meet with those people need to look like them.
That's
Okay.
right.
So here in Thurston County, that could be a challenge, but I think that's something that we should look to overcome. So city council support having a team that can really get down to basics and find and meet and encourage and help develop and prepare the African Americans to purchase homes.
That's absolutely right. And one of the other successes we're having is we've got 3 financial institutions now that are hiring community lending officers who are not being remunerated solely by commission, and they don't look like me, right? And so that is also helping open the door, because then you have people in the lending field who actually don't care about those $1 million deals and those large jumbo loans and go after the easy ones. They're willing to work alongside people. But the buyer outreach stuff is all relational. And some of our other successes in Spokane and also out of WSECU, Tina LaBouvet, who used to be a counselor for 15 years in Tacoma, is now working for them. And she's doing these cohort groups. They're meeting in church basements.
Yes.
And that cohort thing is really powerful, because you can use match savings programs with it to encourage people to deal with their debt and down payment, but they can also support each other, right? And so those are all angles that we're pursuing and would hope we can create. But I really appreciate your comments, because we did 4 stories early on when we started this thing with recent Black buyers, and I can share those with you. But for every one of them, they had to overcome that hurdle of saying, this is never going to be for me, right? Yep.
And I know Commerce has lots of dollars that they've been pushing along these lines. But when it comes to dollars to religious organizations, there's oftentimes restrictions in those grants.
Yeah.
Have you looked at that and how to overcome that? Because the meeting place for us is the church.
Yes. At this point, we have been very, let me choose my words carefully. We've been deliberate in not taking public dollars into the kinds of work that would prohibit us from doing what we need to do, and looking more at philanthropic resources specifically for the work with the Black churches. And we have 6 Black churches in Seattle working with the Nehemiah initiative there that are going to develop their property specifically for home ownership. And there are now 4 church projects in the Tacoma with the Tacoma Ministerial Alliance lined up as well. So, there's huge opportunities there, but we're being very cautious about making sure. And I worked for Habitat for Humanity for 24 years, so I kind of know the challenges with those public resources. Thank you for mentioning it.
I think the question before us as a commission is to consider making a recommendation to the city council for further investigation and research, and I'd like to do that at this point. I move that the Equity Commission recommends to the Lacey City Council that they begin a more deliberate inquiry into the Black home ownership initiative for its use in the city of Lacey, given that one of the 4 goals of our strategic plan that they just approved talks about livability. And home ownership is such an important aspect of livability. So this is just one aspect or one strategy that this community can pursue in strategizing ways to achieve that particular goal. So for this entity, the commission, to recommend to the city that it takes whatever the next steps to begin to be a network partner, I think is the word, so that these dollars that are out there, this program that's there, is part of a bigger picture of trying to make some reparations to Black folk for the indignities and the discrimination and inequities for all these years. The lack of intergenerational, I'm sorry, I'm commenting versus halting my motion so that it could possibly get a second and then some discussion. I'm sorry.
I second that.
Okay.
And so now that it's open for discussion, I guess maybe just a couple of comments from us here at the city. So I think, just a little bit, we wanted to learn about, hey, what's going on, what should be kind of our next steps. And it sounds like, you've got a motion and a second here on the table for us to continue the research and take a look at what it could be to join a partnership. And I think that's where we're really at is now we'd like to go do a little bit more research and, we can talk a little bit more with Marty about what that could look like and what that's going to be looking like here in Thurston County and get some more information so that we can bring it back at a later date. Whether it comes back to the commission for more discussion or goes right to the council for future discussion. But we want to do some more discussion and diligence and working with Marty here in the future.
I would just add in the discussion on Saturday at a meeting of the NAACP of Thurston County that now exists. That was a young woman who's affiliated with one of the institutions or whatever, and she's working on this project. And unfortunately, I had to leave for another meeting if I could get her name, but she said she had helped 11 families close, and and fell right in line with goals of the NAACP as well. So I made a note to track down who she is and where she works and And whether or not she lives here in Lacey, but here she was, a new member joining the NAACP. So we've been hearing about this. And so now that we can formally move it, I think it's an ideal opportunity for us.
And I just say that it's really comprehensive. I mean, to have the, not only the banks online, but the builders online and the counselors online, so that it is the success, not just throwing money at something, but the success of the process and the heart of the process. I'm really pleased with.
And before we finish, I just have one question. Do you have a follow-through program? So someone qualifies and they purchase a home. You work with Habitat. I used to be on that board in Tacoma. You don't just put them in the house and say, great job, see you later. Is that a part of your process that you have?
Yeah, so again, BHI is a network. So all of the network partners, we hope, are committed to that. We believe they are. Now, if someone buys directly from a bank and doesn't go through any kind of a nonprofit program that has counseling and that support like Habitat offers tied to it, the beauty of referring everyone through the Washington Homeownership Resource Center is that we can be tracking and getting people into the HUD certified counselors, and they can provide them with, beyond what a bank will, how do you get the post-purchase counseling and support that you need? And then we have this massive effort called Sustaining Existing Home Buyers that's also underway. It's centered primarily so far in Seattle. We're expanding soon into Tacoma, where there are programs specifically to help people with heirs rights, estate planning issues, accessing owner-occupied repair programs, getting property tax exemption, all of the things that are making people vulnerable to actually losing their homes, and understanding how to avert the pressures that come from all of the buyers that are calling folks, especially in the Hilltop now and in the Central District, saying, I want to buy your property. So tremendous amount of work all the way through the system, hopefully making sure that we also mitigate the loss of existing homeowners as well.
One more question. The Covenant Home Ownership Act deals with services people who have been in the community before 69, right? But the Black DHI is not restricted to that.
That's
right?
correct. The Covenant Home Ownership account, in order to, I mean, just quickly, I don't know how much time we have, so I'll be brief. We essentially offered the state a choice. The state was either going to get sued for discriminatory practices, or they could create a resolution, right? So the resolution was to create a special purpose credit program, it's called, which is allowed by the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, as long as you do a study that verifies and proves that you have actually committed discriminatory acts, then you can actually target a population with interventions like down payment assistance or loans. And so in order to navigate the legal space, and we're not fully sure that there won't come a day when the state will be sued now for actually doing this work, especially in the climate we all know we are in. But that said, the Covenant Homeownership account and program exists because we can legally verify and prove discrimination up until the day that redlining and restrictive covenants were prohibited by the state, i.e. April of 1968. Okay, so for households that don't meet those criteria, though, it's not a closed door, because as I mentioned, we have banks and credit unions that are creating their own special loan programs, and HomeSite's about to launch its own first mortgage program with some of that same community reinvestment program dollars. And so we're working on creating as many resources and programs as we can knit together for all the Black households, whether they were part of that CHAP Covenant Homeownership Account Program date or not, right? So we don't discourage anybody from trying to figure out the pathway, but the housing counselors have access to what are all those programs that exist? How can we layer them together and how can we get you to success?
I would just make one last comment before we vote on the motion.
Yeah.
In the book that I did, Blacks in Thurston County from 1950 to 1975 through an oral interview process, unequivocally, housing discrimination was the number one problem that everyone talked about when asked what have their experiences been like. And that was right up to 75. So there's a big bunch of people past the 1968 thing that continue to be factored out of home ownership and being able to buy a home. So that was a very interesting question, Andy. Thank you. So it's a bigger group than just before 1968
Yeah.
and ongoing
Yeah.
to this day. It's a constant complaint about denial of loans and redlining and, those racially restricted covenants are still on the books in a lot of places.
And we've heard about that discrimination in a lot of our community forums too. Well, should we have a vote on this to send this recommendation to look at the partnership with PHI? Their strategies and goals. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
That's what you need from us?
I just on the end of that discussion, this legal, the local
Chair, we
regulation.
got a question from the clerk.
Oh,
Let me just declare that that was a success.
oh, yes, that was the
Motion
ayes have
carries.
it, that motion carries.
Unanimous.
Yeah.
What's their name?
Just another, on a different point, it would be great, I think it would be great if the planning commission would look at this, regulatory reform and just, begin to look at some of the other, resources that were given to us.
Chair, we'll say we've got all of these resources and we'll make sure that our community and economic development department has that. And they can take a look through those materials and determine kind of what the next steps could potentially be as we continue as a whole to kind of study and have conversations with Marty about what the partnership.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Marty.
Thank you, Marty, so
Thank you,
much.
Jennifer and Vanessa.
Thank you all for your leadership and for what you're doing. We all have a lot of work to do and it's going to take every one of us. So thank you.
Oh, goodness.
Right. Moving on to the next order of business, Community Resource Unit, Mobile Outreach Team, and our 30/30 initiative. Police Chief and Deputy Police.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. Well, your first hour is on home street, and your second couple hours will be on this topic. Okay. Okay. So Deputy Chief Bob Hollis is going to talk about a presentation he gave down in Phoenix about our mobile outreach team and crew unit. It's Bob talked about who we talked to down there, but he represented us very well. And we're getting a lot of notice nationwide and throughout the state for our model. It's a unique model because of the way it's funded. And we'll speak to that a little bit towards the end. Why don't you go, Bob, and talk about how we got to here and what we got.
So about 2 weeks ago, I had the opportunity to go to a crisis responder conference down in Phoenix. It was a 4-day-long conference where crisis responders from across the nation came to kind of discuss best practices and everything like that. So we had the opportunity, myself, along with the fine folks at Olympic Health and Recovery Services to discuss our program. So what they wanted to do was there's a lot of different models in terms of how crisis responders will respond to people in crisis or in homelessness. And so we wanted to talk about our model and that, hey, this is a model that's been working for us in our city. We feel like we're getting a lot of community backing behind it, and also for the folks that we're interacting with, a lot of positive outcomes in terms of getting people to the place where they need to be or getting them the services that they need as well. So a little bit about CREW, or our Community Response Unit. So I use a lot of acronyms. I'll try and make sure I spell them out as we go. So CREW is our Community Response Unit. They were originally created in 2019 as kind of a crime suppression team. But as they started looking around in their program, they realized, hey, there's other needs that we have in the city. We can let patrol officers do their patrol thing, and CREW ended up working with a lot of the homeless population, a lot of folks in that were in crisis. And at that time, they started off with only one officer. Shortly thereafter, they came a second one. And then we partnered with another organization to at least have a social worker tied with them, and they all responded to calls together. So from our aspect, there were still a lot of resources going into making sure we could get people the help that they needed, but the program wasn't quite working as we thought it would.
See, if I could interrupt you, I did not set you up for success here. You just want to drag that little box up. I think that would help. There we go.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay, well then, perfect. Just need to go on a little bit this one.
Be better.
I do what I can. So as our CREW officers were interacting with folks that were in crisis in some of our homeless populations, we started realizing that we needed to develop a model in which we could make sure that we could get people to positive outcomes. And it wasn't just working with ourselves, it was working with a lot of other nonprofits, right? We're partnering with other departments, city departments, we're partnering with other nonprofits. And so we're going out there and making these different connections because we realized we weren't going to be able to do it all by ourselves. We need to have all these different partnerships in order to try and get people to where they needed to be. We wanted to try and get people linked to resources. And so what that meant was, as our CREW officers were going out, they realized that a lot of folks that they were working with, dealing with, they didn't have any cell phones, they didn't have any IDs, they didn't have any paperwork documentation. And so a lot of these other nonprofits that we were working with, such as Lacey's Veteran Hub, were able to help, maybe there were some vets that were homeless. We're able to help get them, their DD-214s to try and help start that process to get their paperwork documentation all in order. Getting cell phones, having cell phones charged, obviously in this day and age of technology, as weird as it sounds, everyone's got a cell phone. But if you're in the middle of a crisis, if you don't have a home to go to, it's a little bit hard to charge your phone, right? So finding ways in which we might contact a person out in the field, but then keeping in contact with them to ensure they're either going to follow appointments or whatnot was proven to be very difficult. So we found different ways of getting folks cell phones and some different equipment that they needed out in the world. We also realized that just having a social worker along with us, we needed a little bit more. So in 21, the partnership with the previous agency kind of dissolved. Olympic Health and Recovery Services and Joe Avalos came along and said, hey, we have an idea that we think will work. They presented us with this idea of having a behavioral outreach person along with a crisis clinician that would help provide case management for everybody we came in contact with and would provide wraparound services. So we're dealing with folks out in the world, but now we can start, they would start building cases on people. So if someone needed mental health, they would be able to direct them in that direction. If someone needed to get documents, they'd direct them in another direction. But we would be able to consistently keep, they would be able to keep in contact with those folks to make sure that they were going to appointments. And so much that if they needed to be driven anywhere, that OHRS would drive them to an appointment, whether it be to the doctor or to get their meds, anything along those lines. We utilized the Compassionate Care Fund, so that was kind of a internal source for, people needed a short-term stay, or we needed to purchase those cell phones. We utilized that fund to pay for those services for overnight hotel stays and for cell phones as well. Through this, we were also able to get clothing, blankets, any other documents that they may have needed. So this Compassionate Care Fund was really helpful in making sure we got people not only to where they needed to go, but if they needed supplies because of where they were, because we're trying to meet people where they are, we were able to get supplies to them so that they will at least be a little bit more comfortable in the environment that they were in. We also partnered with the Public Works. They were able to get 2 employees, and we developed the rapid response team. And so what their job was is if we ever found a lot of debris or trash on a public right of way, these folks would be the ones that would go and clean up those areas. And then they would also provide, I think for private landowners, they would at least provide references for private landowners as to where they might be able to go to help clean up their property if they had a large amount of debris or trash on their own private property. So we partnership with OHRS. They're a licensed behavioral health agency serving Thurston and Mason counties. They were founded, their governing board was founded in 2017 and is comprised of, or the governing board is comprised of 2 Thurston County commissioners, 1 Mason County commissioner. And so OHRS actually serves both Mason and Thurston County areas. And their mission is to provide access to an effective, reliable safety net of behavioral health crisis and recovery support services throughout the region.
Do they have their own funding to do?
Yes. So part of their funding to do some of this, at least for the part that we partner with, is through Medicare, Medicaid. And then we also will provide half of those funds for the employees that we're working with. So our model, what we had was they wanted to have a crisis commission that had at least a bachelor's or master's degree. And so getting them licensed, they felt was a very important thing, just to kind of provide some legitimacy to the program. Clinicians completed risk and needs assessments for the folks that they were encountering out in the environment, and they would try and refer as appropriate to the appropriate places that they needed to go if they needed like some type of mental health evaluation or if they just needed services. Their clinicians were able to help drive people towards those resources. The crisis clinicians also utilize their own lived experience. So a lot of the clinicians may have been homeless at one time. They may have had struggles with mental health issues back in the day, but were able to overcome them. So we found that model, working with those that were already in crisis, there was able to be a kind of a bond and a bridge. They were able to kind of break down those barriers. And so more likely than not, a lot of folks that were out having crisis were more willing to talk with our clinicians. All of their staff received training at OHRS, and for us, we have them embedded at our police department. So we have some office space, not only in our current station, but we're building new space in our new police station as well. And for us, training took the form of radio training. So we issued them all portable radios with the intent of them being able to go to calls, because the intent is not necessarily for us to go to calls, for them to go to calls. However, they do have a database that if they found they were going to be responding to a person that was going to be violent, in that particular case, they would then call us. We would make sure that the scene was safe and then turn it over to them, because the last thing that we would want is to have any of our clinicians get into any type of trouble. So we felt that this was a good way to go. They also were taken around to all of our briefings, and so that officers were able to understand and see who the folks were that were now responding to a lot of these crisis calls. And there was, again, not only were the clinicians building bridges with folks out in the world, but they were also building bridges with our officers. And officers felt very comfortable if there was a person that was in need to say, hey, we can just get on the phone, give our clinician a call, and they would be able to come out. There wasn't just kind of this, we weren't trying to silo information or anything like that. And it did break down a lot of barriers. Yes.
So if someone is in a crisis like situation and they're going to be violent, how do you respond to that?
So what happens then is we as officers would show up to that call, and we've gone through de-escalation training, and we have yearly what's called a CIT training, so crisis intervention training, and we do our best to try and utilize those tactics. We'll try and talk to the people. We try and, hey, what can we do for you today? Hey, we have a person that we can call if you just want services that you can talk to, and they're not in uniform, right? So our crisis clinicians are just in normal everyday uniform, normal everyday clothing. They don't show up in uniform. We do issue them like it's not a pullover jacket, but that's about the extent of the identification that they have. So they look like an everyday person. So if we're able to get that person that's in crisis kind of in a place where now it's safe, or if they had a weapon of some type, they're putting the weapon away, we want to try and make sure we deal with that first, and then we'll turn it over to our crisis clinician. So, for example, maybe it's a situation where there was a crime involved. We would take care of the crime, but we would still let our crisis clinicians know, hey, we interacted with this person today. We feel that they might need their help. And even if in this particular case, we end up transporting them to jail because there was a crime involved, the clinicians would then follow up to try and get them the proper services. And if it meant getting them to appointments later on down the road, they would go that route.
And that's while they're in jail, like there's programs.
They're in jail, and sometimes if they're released from jail, our clinicians will continue to follow up with them. So it's just one-stop shop, and then they're left alone, which is why we believe our model is a lot better than some of the other models, is because there's that consistent follow-up.
Benefit of having the clinicians involved, back when it was just our officers, service navigator, that's the first iteration of this. The service navigator would help navigate them to a service organization, one of the nonprofits or one of the others, right? The nice thing about the clinicians and your support team, they have their own HIPAA controlled records that we don't have access to. We don't know anything about them. That's their private records, not subject to the Public Records Act. And they can provide comprehensive wraparound services and ongoing care. So the first time they see somebody, the second time, the third time, they have that history there. For us, we don't have all the service organizations, all the other services that have been provided to them, their case history, all those kind of things. So it's really important to have that aspect of it. They're embedded at the police department just because we contact so many people on a routine basis. We're their gateway to get better access to the clientele, which is why OHS really likes being with us. That's really been a key part of this. So kind of the funding portion of this, kind of the group one, if you will, is that so city pays about $250 million, about $230,000 a year to get these 4 personnel on a contract basis embedded in the police department. But through Medicaid, Medicare, OHS, as behavioral service organizations, have the bill for their services. So they get reimbursed. So we kind of get a double up for our part of the contracts. We're able to get 4 people instead of just 2. So it's really a cool program. It's kind of rare because you have to be a behavioral service organization to build Medicare, Medicaid. So pretty cool, right? So kind of the genius of Tim Lewis and Joe Lewis to make this all happen.
So shouldn't you need to know that these clinicians are capable to do that versus, are we not putting them in danger of any? Because you wouldn't know that until you kind of have some sort of assessment initially.
I kind of thought that'd be the case, is that what would happen is we would with the police, with the crew unit and patrol would go contact the person, and they kind of do this handoff. And that's kind of what it was at first, but we deal with all the same people, the same population. The vast majority of the people we deal with on a routine basis here, right? And so it started out that well. Now, because they're on our frequency, they have their own police radios. They're deployed 80% of the time on their own to these incidents. And they volunteer, oh, that's so-and-so. Yeah, we're en route, go talk to the individual. Because they know that they have a personal relationship with that individual, right? And that's kind of the true model. That was kind of what we set up through, because setting up relationships with folks on the street, you can meet with them, it takes 17, 18 times meeting and talking to somebody before they start trusting you, right? And the reason why we give them, a blanket or shoes, to help build that relationship that, hey, we don't overpromise. We make sure that very realistic and what we provide, what we tell them, we can make things we can make happen, because they've been in crisis. They've been in the system. The system's incredibly complicated. And it's our job to try to simplify it as much as possible and help them navigate.
So, of course, I don't want to get ahead of your presentation, but are you going to talk about the role that the businesses are playing in this plan? If there's a lot of theft and those types of things going on, but someone with mental illness or drug problem, they hang around businesses, are they offered training to be able to identify Jane Doe or John Doe who's hanging around, clearly has some issues, and they're able to call, so someone outreach person could come to contact that person or anything along those lines?
Businesses themselves?
Yes.
So usually what happens is we'll get a phone call from a business that, we have so-and-so who might be in our doorway, for example. If our crew if the Mott folks aren't working, an officer will respond. And sometimes just an officer, contacting the person, getting a name, and then passing that on to our mobile outreach team folks. The mobile outreach team, they have a database of all the people, and it's very rare. It's been very rare that they found somebody that's not already within their database. And so oftentimes if we end up going and contacting them, we might tell them, hey, we contacted so-and-so, this is where they were. Mott will actually try and track them down. They'll try and see if they can contact them. They were last seen in the area of McDonald's, say, or they might be hanging out near the Target. They'll go down there and try and what we'll do is, hey, this is what they were last seen wearing, walking this direction. So even if it's hours later on down the road, they still have the ability to talk with them and say, hey, we've been trying to get in contact with you. We noticed that you were out in this, business overnight. Can we get you someplace? Is there something that is it, they have their own method of getting to talk to people. And again, most of the folks that they've talked with, they've already established that relationship. So it's much easier for them to talk with our Mott folks versus sometimes it is when we show them.
Do they have authority to stop the act if they see it? I mean, are they?
No, their job is completely to try and get folks to the services that they need or to try and do some type of evaluation. So if it's some type of act such as some type of criminal act,
Yes.
that's where we have to deal with that portion.
Okay, then
So
they have to report that to you and you have to be dispatched and come in.
we try to be it really depends on the type of crime. We try and be very cautious because recognizing that sometimes a person in crisis might not know or understand what's going on. We try and Mott will tell us, hey, we've dealt with this person before. They're just in crisis. They may not know what's going on. So they provide us with that information to kind of dictate, all right, well, do we actually need to go and make an arrest right now? Or is it something where we might document it in a report and forward it off to our prosecutor? We might not make a physical arrest per se, right? Because again, if we're trying to make sure that folks have a positive outcome, it's not always jail and it's not always making an arrest right then and there. Making an arrest is the last thing that we want to do. We understand that homeless is not a crime, being crazy is not a crime, being in crisis is not a crime. We need
But
to try and
stealing and doing some other criminal act is a crime. And so I'm just trying to, we have to have a balance.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the vast majority of times we go out, right? So we have the high frequency location, right? who deal with a lot of people in crisis, just by the nature of the business, right? So our crew team goes out and meets with those folks, tell them what we can do for them, what we can't do for them, the tools they have, such as trespass letters, things like that. And things that we come into kind of intervention, say, hey, we see this individual, let us know. So before they cause a problem, disrupt your business, do whatever, let us come out and talk to that individual. If they're having a bad day. Obviously, if someone just comes in to buy something and leaves, no big deal, right? But if they're coming in, they're disrupting, they're opening things, doing all sorts of stuff that people do, let us know before it evolves into this big deal, right? So we can handle it at the lowest level. Usually if it's a minor crime, it's up to the store owner whether they want to prosecute or not. Most times it's just, I don't want this guy to get out of here. I don't want to come back. Can you do that? They don't usually want to prosecute some. Yeah, we want to prosecute. They did this damage. They did this, did that. They assaulted somebody. Then you have a victim. That person wants to prosecute. Yeah, we move forward. Right? We accept the rest. Normally, most times it's a low level matter. It's more likely we're going to put them into services. Now, Thurston County starting up with their, it's called CAP, it's their people in crisis support, it's kind of a homeless court. People start getting, that starts December 1st, only start routing some folks into that court, right? So that'll be another option where people basically have the option to take services versus having a criminal trial. So that'll be another off-ramp in this process. So there's a lot of different things that we can do. But as you know, we do so much more education than we do enforcement in the city of Lacey. And our officers will talk to you a very, very, very long time before they do anything. We get really good at that. To the point sometimes they say, fine, just tell me. So it's one of those tools that we use, right? We really, when I look to hire officers, I'll look at it later in the presentation, I'm looking for people that bring order to chaos, who have good moral character, right? That's the archetype of the people I hire here. So they bring order to chaos. See these chaotic situations, they do it in a variety of ways, and you'll see that theme over and over and over again. You really emphasize education, finding better outcomes versus using enforcement as a last measure.
Question regarding juveniles, how you handle them any different? At least one city, Chicago, I think, and some others have declared it a crisis, with juvenile crime. So in dealing with juveniles here, do you consider them in a crisis if they're, constantly stealing, doing things? Do the navigators get behind that to see what's going on with the family and this? Do you deal with them, or do you just take them to a juvenile center and they get all their counseling and help there? How does that work?
Yeah, juvenile services aren't huge here in the state of Washington. Most of what happens is at school resource officer level because they know the kids and the families based on our school resource officer program. They can bring MOD in as an intervention measure.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like the second tier. First, you're going to have the school resource officer who knows the family, knows the parents, knows the background of what's been going on. There's a child experiencing crisis or going through a struggle. Generally, our SROs know about those folks, right? Unless they're just like a drop from the sky runaway that we've never seen before. We do get those occasionally, but it's rare. But yeah, we bring in MOD kind of as the second tier if the SRO just isn't getting where they need to go. Then they bring in MOD to provide those services. It's rare that that's going to go into a criminal matter. We do not like introducing juveniles into the criminal justice system, except that's very last resort. Really good. So, but yeah, it's a different model than Chicago for sure. Definitely.
Lacey may not have the same problem that Homer, Seattle has.
Oh, God, no.
13, 14-year-olds still in cars, constantly doing those types of things, and they got guns. But, I haven't heard, much of that here in Lacey, if any, but.
Well, we have had people come down the 5 corridor and commit crime along the 5 corridor, which we are, as you will know. So we will get that type of activity. That's not typically the people that we come in contact with as far as being in crisis on the street or in crisis mode. Generally, it's when we're conducting a criminal investigation and all of a sudden, it turns out to be a juvenile, right? You didn't know until you took the guy in custody. Oh, you're a kid. Who knew, right? And then you go through the process for that. But now you got a violent crime involving firearms, that kind of stuff. That's a different matter altogether.
We had a lot of community forums from different groups to hear what they need from Lacey. And can you give us any feedback what these clients that you're seeing sometimes chronically, what do they need, like from Lacey, get into a different situation, to have a different feeling.
Oh, we need psych beds, I'll tell you that.
Like
We need
psych
psych beds. There are not enough psych beds locally or that's a state.
Yeah,
We don't have, so there's,
3 hours.
exactly, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
So they developed something called a 23-hour kind of center, where they would have a center set with like barca loungers type of thing, recliners, and people would just go there for 23 hours. Officer could drop the person off there and they would care for their needs for the 23 hours, right? It's kind of like this, take a beat kind of thing, right? So you get the person out of crisis, give them something warm, give them some fed, somewhere they can relax and not be in crisis or threatened or anything else. We haven't seen those stood up anywhere except for like King County. So I mean, we just haven't seen it take off, frankly, as a thing.
yeah.
But right now you have officers as a last resort, take someone to ER, right, to Providence, to St. Pete's, and they're there forever. And I don't know if you've been to St. Pete's emergency room, but generally you're gonna get a hallway room is what they call it. And hallway rooms are not great. They don't have the capacity and they're being overused and it's a problem. So a drop-in center for 23 hours, that would be beneficial. Actual psych beds would be beneficial for folks that need psychiatric treatment in care, in care. It's just those are few and far between.
How do we know that it's a person that either maybe they have a special need and they're homeless versus somebody that's in crisis? How do you determine that and how do you treat them?
So that's where we rely on the MOT members to make that assessment. So they have the license and the education to kind of understand that world much more than us. We have a little, I would say, thumbnail into the world just through some of our trainings and everything like that, but we can't make a decision based off of what we see all the time, right? We have certain laws that we can go and say, all right, well, maybe I need to send you to the hospital, or maybe you're breaking a law, which I can then take you to jail. But what our MOT members do is they can actually diagnose a person to determine, oh, yes, they are in crisis, they have a mental health issue, or maybe it's some combination of both. And so we rely on their expertise to kind of help us understand where this person is at. And sometimes they'll tell us, hey, this person is not only maybe homeless, but they do have some mental health issues that they're struggling with as well. So they're able to kind of walk through all of that based off of their training and experience to help us better understand where people are. So we've out of this, we've had quite a few successes. As this program has kind of developed, and again, MOT has gone out and responded to calls that they can respond to without us. It's kind of selfishly, for ourselves, we've seen a increase in officers' efficiency. So now a lot of times to make time for people in crisis to deal with folks that are dealing with homelessness, it takes a lot of time and effort. Our MOT members are able to go and they can sit and talk with a person for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours at a time, whereas maybe my officers can't necessarily do that. We might be able to spend an hour or so, but based off of calls for service, we are run by our radio, so to speak. And so we've seen our officers' efficiency be able to kind of go, even if it's a worst case scenario where they're dealing with a person that might be violent, they're dealing with a call, and then they're able to pass the call off to MOT once the scene is safe or once the person in crisis has kind of calmed down a little bit. There's been great collaboration between us and our healthcare practitioners. So because of MOT and their understanding about what people in crisis might be experiencing, they've been able to help us understand. So if we do have to send somebody to a jail, we can kind of help relay, hey, this is what this person is going through. And then either in a jail facility or at the hospital, we're able to get better information to those doctors or to those jailers about what might be going on with that person. For us, we've seen a huge decrease in the number of involuntary commitments. So that's, again, we have the laws about, if I think that you're meeting this criteria, I'm sending you to the hospital for a hopefully 72-hour hold. We've seen a decrease in our responses to that because Mott has the ability to make those calls, understand the people that they're working with, and get them to where they need to go. Many times, I would say 60% of the time, 70% of the time, a lot of our callers are just repeat callers. They're calling because they just want to get something off their chest. They're calling because they are in crisis. There's not necessarily anything going on, but they're in their house, they're in their tent, they're in their apartment, and they just call and they call and they call. Well, Mott can also go and deal with those people and help get them the resources that they need as well. And more importantly, a lot of the gaps that we found in trying to get people the help that they need, Mott has been able to cover. And so now, instead of us just sending them one of two places, either to the hospital or to the jail, now we have an opportunity to send people to, maybe they're going to the Veterans Hub to start their paperwork. Maybe now they're going to a different, they wanted a bus ticket to get back home because they're from out of state. There's a myriad of things that we can now do, and we have the ability to follow up with them. So Mott will follow up with those people to make sure that they actually got home, that they got the meds that they need, or they're making their appointments. Those gaps that we might have been missed where it's just either a binary choice, one or the other. Now we have a bunch of different options that we're able to use.
Med regulation is so difficult.
Absolutely.
Remembering to take it
Yep.
or taking, not wanting.
And once you get on, and if you're consistent, that usually helps get people back.
Yeah.
But Mott has the ability to kind of go and do those follow-ups, whereas we, again, tied to the radio, might not be able to do that. It could potentially be weeks before we see that person again. And so hours of operation for our mobile outreach team right now, again, we have 4 folks and we kind of overlap the crews a little bit. We have one crew that works from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then the other crew, Sunday through Wednesday, the other crew works Wednesday through Saturday, 12 p.m. till 10 p.m. And part of this is we felt that just based off of our calls for service, that these kind of coverage, they covered the majority of the time. We would love for Mott to be 24/7, but right now we're just not there. And so we're trying to take what we can get with what we're afforded. And in 2023, they went to about 4,000 calls of service, and 85% of the time they did it without us. So those few calls that we did have to go again, they're dealing with a person or it's a violent type situation that they're having to deal with. But the rest of the time, they're able to go out there and handle calls themselves.
So context, we go to about 40,000 different types of calls and incidents a year. That's 10% of workload being handled by 4 people, right? So versus the rest of our department, which up until now has been running around 50-ish officers. But that's pretty incredible, right? So it's a big force multiplier for us. It frees up the officers to handle critical events and criminal matters that they're better suited for.
So I have a question.
Networking.
So this is great, really good. But I've seen too many TV where there's just officers, I don't know, I mean, causing this tragedy. So that now you have Mott team. What about officers? Is officers being trained, or is your manual or anything changed to?
Yeah, so one of the things that's great about working here is we're different than a lot of places, just in terms of how we train and the officer and our hiring practices as well. And so the officer that is out on the street, number one, is, I guess I can brag, I feel like is better than your average officer, right? And we're very fortunate that in the way in which we do police work is that we get a lot of support from folks like you guys out in the community, right? So everyone's very supportive of how we do our work.
I'll pick it up. So we have a big focus on our agency and training. That's one of the things that makes us different. So we do overlap training, which means for an average month, an officer works 14 to 15 days out of the month, 10.7-hour days. One of those days, one of the Fridays they work, they have access to 10.7 hours of training, right? So we do have a formal training day. So we take them out of the field, we do a full training day. So we work 15 days, one of those days is gonna be a training day. And so we bring them in, and all of our training that we do, I demand that there's a call-out component that talks about ethics as part of that training, right? It's not just a technique, but why do we use that technique? When is it appropriate to use that technique? What are we trying to accomplish? Because ethics isn't something you train on every 2 years and check a box. Literally, officers are dealing with ethical dilemmas every single day. So I want them to see the world and that from that lens and talk about why we're doing what we're doing. Is there a better way? Yes, we can, but should we do this technique? Is there a better way, a softer way, a different way? Can we use time? Can we use distance? Can we use a different technique? Can we bring the right person to the scene to handle this? Maybe I'm not the best person to handle this, right? Get our ego out of it and say, you know what? I bet someone else might be able to talk to this person. I'm just not getting through. Right? So it's about using those different tools in our toolbox and training folks to be able to do that.
And the important for us, a part of our training component as well is also scenarios. And so it's not just they're opening a book and reading, trying to regurgitate answers. It's doing this kind of book learning, so to speak, and also applying it out in the field. So our training instructors will develop scenarios that has an ethics component that will utilize a lot of the crisis intervention techniques. And our cadre will then evaluate them on how they're doing it. So before they even go out to the call, going out to a call is not the first time they're doing it. They've actually had practice doing it in a training environment so that we can kind of tweak what needs to happen before they go out to the field.
And it's all based on building blocks. So you get the basics, and then you build on it, and you make it more complex, and then there's off-ramps and things. So it really gets people engaged in the training, makes it challenging, makes it fun. Frankly, we try to make a fun environment when we do it. And our training instructors are really proud about that, about how all these different trainings actually interlace together and not siloed off. So that's really kind of one of the special things that we do. And it's really, we'll talk about kind of some of the other stuff we do too, but that's really kind of the key to what we call it the Lacey way. We really spend a lot of time educating people, because if I can get your voluntary compliance, it's so much better than if it's an enforcement. Because you're only going to, if I use an enforcement tool, you're only going to keep doing what I want you to do until you no longer fear that I'm going to be there forcing you to do it. Versus, hey, if I can get you to understand, hey, you need to be compliant, you need to follow the speed limit because there's kids playing in the street, this is your neighborhood too, that kind of thing. Like, yeah, you're right, I probably should. Right? You're going to get a lot more compliance, right? And our officers are not occupiers, right? We're members of the community. And that's our biggest compliment, right? Our officers are members of the community, they just happen to be wearing a uniform. That's the biggest compliment we get about our officers, right? That's kind of the special sauce about Lacey. So all our officers are really invested in the community. When I hire has a connection to the city and to our community. That's really key. I don't hire helicopter cops that live somewhere far away, just come and work and then go fly away again, kind of thing. You'll see that in other agencies. We don't do hiring bonuses here because I don't want mercenaries, frankly. I'll be real upfront. I don't want it, right? People need to come here for the right reasons. So anyway, I'm all drifting off course here, but anyway, that's kind of the secret, right? So.
Proud of our police department.
All right. Okay, now we're going to get into officers and employees. Okay, so 30 by 30 initiative is an initiative that's about a couple years old now. And the goal of 30 by 30 is to get 30% of law enforcement to be 30% female by year 2030. So nationally, it's around 15% or so, a little less, depending on where you're at, what you're doing. And I got to tell you, when I came to Lacey, I wasn't used to that. I came from Southern California, pretty progressive agency. And we had like 35, 40% female. And I had multiple female chiefs. I had female captains, female partners, lieutenants, sergeants, everybody doing every job in PD. And just gender wasn't a thing, right? It wasn't something that was even thought of because we had said it was just every day. I came up here and kind of started looking around. Where's some of our female officers? What's going on? Yeah, because it was only literally about 10% of our departments being. You know, I was like, well, why is that? So we kind of started, tearing it apart a little bit, trying to deconstruct it. And I looked at the women's locker room. Not good, not good at all. Real small compared to the men's locker room. Not well lit, wasn't well taken care of, wasn't things you like to see. And so we kind of started diving into the 30 by 30 initiative because it is something I wanted to pay attention to, and I really wanted to get involved with. This was just jumping up, it was just getting started. And so we looked at, the first thing we looked at qualifications, and when you're hiring as an officer and look at our webpage, you have mandatory disqualifiers and then possible disqualifiers, right? And so like first one, so we went through that, and I went through all the qualifications and said, okay, unless there's a legal standard, a federal requirement or a state requirement or case law, you're going to justify why the standards here, right? Example, one that you may not think of. If you ever use a hallucinogen, ever in your entire history, you could never be a police officer. If you just one time tried with hallucinogen at a party 10 years ago, you could never be a police officer. But if you were a heroin addict, which stopped a year ago, I could hire you, which was the strangest thing I'd ever heard of. And I go, what is that based on? Well, there's this study, that talks about rebound hallucinations. If you're okay, that's a Timothy Leary study about people that were like heavy dosing LSD back in the 60s. And I go, maybe, but it doesn't apply, right? So we got rid of that standard because there was no state mandate for it. It didn't make any sense. There's no good science behind it.
Standard?
Yeah, that was the Lacey standard. And so we went through that process just to dissect through everything, make sure there was a reason behind what we were doing, right? And so by getting rid of unnecessary criteria, that's really important. And then in our hiring website, explicitly lay out the hiring process, so there's no mystery to it. Okay, that's a big deal too, because there's a difference between male candidates and female candidates. Males look at a list of requirements for a job and they go, well, I meet about 50-60% of them. Good enough. I'm going to apply, right? Female candidates are totally different. If they don't meet every single one of your requirements, they won't apply because they fear rejection and no, because they've heard it so often, right? And so it's different. So you have to make sure you get rid of all the superfluous nonsense and just get down to brass tacks and remove the mystery of it. Because understand, a lot of these candidates have never gone through the civil service process, right? So we handled that. Then when I hire you, so you go through the process, you take the written, which is a verified non-biased test through Pacific Standards and Testing. You take the physical qualification, which is a minimum qualification test. It's not jumping out of helicopters. It's not scaling buildings. It's the minimum requirement required to do a peace officer in the state of Washington. Then you come and do a preliminary interview based upon your combined score with a couple of my officers. And then you get ranked. And then based upon where which band you're in, you come and talk to me, and I get three candidates for every open position, right? And then I interview those 3 candidates. I look for fit, and who's going to best fit the organization. Are we a good fit for you? Are you a good fit for us? And then I make my decision. That's how we do it. And so once I put you into backgrounds, I assign you a mentor right then and there, so that not to give you the answers to the questions in the background, but to navigate the process. We're the only agency that does that. I'm aware of in the state of Washington, because we help you guide through the process, because you've never been through this process before. And you'll lose candidates in the process because, one, they don't think you're interested in them. They don't think you care about them. They're lost in the system. They're scared to ask questions about, what should I wear to my psych test? How long am I going to be there? What's the medical like? Where do I park? Right? Just what's a polygraph like? I've never had a polygraph. What's that like? I have to tell you, when I got hired here, I'd never taken a polygraph. Because I got hired so long ago, I've been a cop so long, they didn't do polygraphs back then. And that's how long ago it is, right? So they're like, you do a polygraph like you always have. Yeah, no problem. So like, explain it to me. I mean, I've seen them on TV, I've used them in investigations. What's a hiring polygraph? Cool. They asked me questions that I didn't even understand. What's that? And then I have to say, so on duty or off duty? Because I worked undercover a long time, and yeah, okay, so all of the story. So So that's how we really started working on making sure we were a welcoming organization to everyone, right? All genders, all races, all backgrounds, all perspectives. That's what we're really trying to accomplish. And we've been pretty successful over the last 5 years, I have to say. So getting into the data a little bit. So right now we're at about 20% of our current employees, our current sport commissioned officers. Commissioned is a police officer, and then we have civilian employees. So our commissioned employees, police officers, like I said, you have almost 20% are female, 80% are male. We've got really great diverse spread on the basis of race. We have Asian, Black, American Indian, white, Hispanic. It's funny. I was in a room at a business meeting, and there's a guy was talking across the way, and he was saying, I was looking at all these white chiefs, and I had, whoa, wait, not white, Hispanic. What are you talking about? I'm Latino. That's my background. Don't make assumptions about people, right? And so I don't either. I really want to know their perspective. What are they coming from? How were they raised? What was their lifestyle like? What adversity have they gone through in their life? What do they bring to the table? How are they going to bring order to chaos? So when I'm talking to these prospective officers, those are the things I delve into, right? So this is just one type of diversity that we look at. So, civilian employees, kind of flip-flop, right? So I've got 71% female and 29% male for civilian support personnel. And again, a pretty good racial mix there as well. And so right now, this is exciting. We have 72 commissioned officer positions. We have no vacancies. There's not a lot of places that can say that. People like to come to work at Lacey, right? Now that I have 72 people, that's great. There are a lot of people in training. Right? So that's been kind of the fun part. It takes a long time to become a police officer. It takes like 14 to 18 months if you're a brand new hire before you're field ready to go work the street. All the hiring, the testing, the backgrounding, the academy, the field training, all the other stuff that goes on. It's quite a while, right? So, but that's cool. So our future department, all 72, right, will be at 30% female, 7% male by 2025. That's pretty exciting. That's 5 years earlier than we thought we were going to be, right? So that's pretty darn exciting.
Good job.
But it's one of those things that we're cognizant of when we look at. Well, we don't. Okay, I'm going to date myself. Who remembers the Brady Bunch? Right? Okay, Brady Bunch.
Barely.
Remember the Johnny Bravo episode? Greg wants to be a pop star, right? And they modulate his voice and everything. The only reason they hire him because he fits the suit. I don't want Johnny Bravos. I don't have a cardboard cutout of what a cop looks like. Like I said, people of good moral character that bring order to chaos with their diverse perspectives. That's what I'm looking for, right? That's what we're accomplishing. So pretty excited.
Are there ways, have you looked at ways to bring those civilian women who are interested up into your commissioned officer?
Oh, we have.
Is that a pool?
Another interesting thing we did when I got here, we didn't hire our community service officers to become officers. We'd go somewhere else to be a police officer. Like, why is that? Right? And it was just kind of a weird dynamic that we would lose our community service officers who are civilians, and they would go somewhere else to be a police officer because they would go testing, they would get hired, and then the story got out that we were hiring our own CSOs, and then they would even apply. And so we got rid of that. We said, hey, no, I want to be able, if you want a career track here, let's make a career track, right? So we did it for our civilian folks who come through records, do other professions besides that, ethics technicians and things like that. We also did it for officers, so they go through the ranks between corporals and sergeants, lieutenants, the organization, deputy chiefs, and eventually chief. We have a track for that. And our community service officers, if you want to be an officer, and you show the maturity and the potential to be an officer, we're going to give you that opportunity to grow into that. And we've had several people be successful at that, including females. And in fact, two of my current officers were both I hired as CSOs, and within a year or so, they became officers. And in fact, right before we came here, I was talking to a couple officers in the report room, and they were both former community service officers, one male and female. And I go, oh, you guys have a club? And so it was just kind of funny that hey, you guys both see us, that's kind of funny. So do look for that opportunity to develop people through the organization.
Question, Chief.
Just
Of your 30%, the blue section there of the females, how does that break down by race
Of the females.
of the females?
they come in all shapes and sizes and flavors. I have Pacific Islanders, I have Hispanic, I have. I'm going through it, what black, I have a black female, I have. My first lieutenant was a female lieutenant. So yeah, I mean, it just kind of, that's not even something I really think about, but it's diverse. I mean, that's the whole thing. That's the nice thing is that when you hire a diverse workforce, you don't even have to think about it. Right, as you go through the organization, you hire based upon, skills levels, perspectives, and what they bring to the organization. So it's kind of it works on its own. It's kind of the beautiful thing about it. So we have pretty good diversity throughout there.
I asked the question because, female police officers, that's kind of a new kind of thing. So in the outreach and the recruitment and getting information out about education and opportunities, as long as that 30% of females don't turn out to again be majority
Right.
white females, where
Well-
females of color don't learn, they aren't in that civilian pool to help,
Well,
so.
when we created our recruiting cadre, we made sure that it's a diverse cadre that will go out and seek a diverse, hey, you look like me, I could be a cop too, right? Kind of thing. And so we have Hispanic females, we have black males, we have white males, white females. It's a diverse look, old and young, tall and wide, everything else, right? And so again, that's the whole idea, is to have a diverse look for everything that we do, so that people know, hey, not only are we are we open to you, but we're welcome, and you can be comfortable here and you can be successful here. And that's really what we strive to. Okay. Okay. Any more questions on 30 by 30 or demographics, that kind of stuff? Okay, last thing I kind of want to speak to is how we're applying equity at the department, right? As far as in the community. It's one thing about diversity and inclusion, but I also want to talk about how we do enforcement. And one of the things that I looked at early in the year and brought to my staff is that I want to focus on human trafficking. So that is a huge equity issue that I see as far as the community. So one of the things that keep me up at night, hey Chief, what keeps you up at night? What's the crime we're not capturing that's not captured either on a radio call or on a traffic stop? Right? What's that crime that's occurring that we're not normally seeing that's occurring? That's the kind of stuff that keeps me up. And so human trafficking is definitely one of those things. Now, I can tell you recently, just by happenstance, there was a radio call of an assault, turned out to be a domestic violence situation, turned out to be a family having a fight over an arranged marriage that wasn't going to go well. And yeah, it was turning that they wanted to take the daughter to another country and do an arranged marriage. Just human trafficking. To our credit, and to my officer's credit, we provide that training. So the school resource officer instantly identified that as a human trafficking issue. Was able to kind of follow up and use some resources on that. We were able to do, hey, there's some other issues here. We brought in some other resources. So when one of the people tried to escape into another country, we actually capture them at the border and then we bring them back to justice, right? And it's because we provide that training and we're looking out for this type of issue. That's okay. That's one example of a radio call we caught it. But what about the stuff that we're not catching, right? So as we move forward, we're looking at a number of ways to make sure that we're not creating an environment of human trafficking. So one of the things you'll see in the very near future is we're going to bring the massage ordinance up to be reviewed and revised by the city council. And why are we doing that? We need to modernize the massage ordinance because the massage industry, unfortunately, can be a haven where you can hide prostitution, human trafficking, money laundering, and organized crime, right? And we got to make sure that we don't allow that to creep into our community or to occur in our community. By modernizing that ordinance, we'll be able to address some of those issues, right? So these are the things that we look at as an organization, try to be proactive and making sure that it doesn't take root in our community. So that is, I'll mention that to you, the Horizon's coming up. It's stuff we pay attention to. It's There's a plan, there's methods of madness, of how we do what we do and why we do it. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
That the only industry that you would be concerned about with human trafficking would be the
No.
massage
To
industry?
be frank, it's kind of our first take a look at it.
Yeah.
I'm always looking for what we don't know and how can we get into it? How can we find out about it? So my history is I spent about a third of my career working undercover. Throughout my career, various levels of the organization. I did counterterrorism, I did narcotics trafficking, all sorts of stuff, right? I do the sexy stuff. I was the homeless guy and I was in the homeless camps, right? Because I wanted to find out who had the drugs, who was doing stolen property, who had weapons. And that really helped me later on in my career and in my capacity as chief, because it helped me to identify that all homeless folks aren't the same, right? There's folks that are homeless only by happenstance and they can be helped pretty quickly. There's a group that has both chemical imbalances, addiction issues, medical and psychotropic issues, and they're going to need more services. Then there's a third group that's just a criminal element that's hiding among homeless, and they're preying on the first two groups and the rest of society, right? And so that's why we have MOT. That's why we have crew to address those first two groups, and then I reserve my cops to handle that third group, because those are the predators we need to take care of.
I smiled when you talked about not letting human trafficking, massage parlors and the misuse of those things come in here. Having been here since 1971, I remember those wild 70s where Martin Way, all the down there.
I've heard stories.
I tell you, so we're trying to keep them from coming back because they have been here. And
Yeah.
they were straightened out, but it used to be the talk of the town, I'll show you.
Well,
But I've been here 53 years, so,
and again, when you have those heavy cash businesses, that can lead to corruption, that can lead to a bunch of other stuff too, which I really work to make sure that we talk about ethics and slippery slopes and different things like that to make sure that we don't deal with that. Before anything gets started, we take a hard look at it. So
one other question. What has been the impact of the legalization of marijuana, where the law won't allow, well, it might have changed by now. They can't bank, they can't have a bank account, and huge sums of cash that these marijuana shopkeepers, it's just interesting. Every other corner, there's a marijuana
most
shop.
of the stuff we see are people doing either cars into closed marijuana dispensaries, shops, if you will. I use dispensary, but yeah, for your shops. And stealing product, not money, right? Or most recently, you have people breaking into legalized grow operations and stealing product, right? We don't see a lot of monetary crime per se. We see some every once in a while. But it's not the easiest thing to do. There's cash there. So it's more of a robbery thing that we're concerned about. Like someone comes in and tries to rob them for their cash when they're open. And we see that occasionally, a couple times a year, but not too often.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a concern. I mean, if it was all electronic and digitized, then we would have the issue like every other store, cash, credit card, debit card. So those things are changing. Banking laws are changing. But yeah, it's just where I see it more, it's an annoyance for a lot of people because you have people smoking in public, right? And no one likes any kind of smoke in public, whether it's tobacco or marijuana. It infringes on their well-being. So.
You happen to have stats like a number of arrests, either DUI versus cannabis or drug?
I'd have to dig into that a little bit. Yeah, I don't have the number off the top of my head. I can tell you we are going to be taking part of just recently joined the Zero Tolerance Project.
Target zero? Target zero.
Project.
Target zero.
So we usually join Project Zero, so we'll be part of that this coming year with the prosecutor's office and with other jurisdictions, and we'll be doing enforcement operations now. Because hey, we started a traffic unit off because I have enough officers now. So we're starting up our traffic unit beginning of the year, so we'll have 2 officers. dedicated traffic enforcement. Had to spend the unit because didn't have enough cops for a while. But now we're bringing it back. Like I said, it's nice to get folks ready and trained on the street now. We were really low for a while and it took a while to build back. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's not my fault that the truck goes fast. I was going downhill.
To the point that was, that began this whole conversation, your invitation to present at the 4-day conference. That was in recognition of the outstanding work the Lacey
Correct.
Police Department is doing.
And
that-
correct,
Okay,
correct.
I just didn't want that point.
Yes.
To
So-
slide by.
Yeah.
I presented at,
Congratulations.
thank you very much. So I presented at the University of Washington, the Crisis Responder Association of Washington. I presented there about, Deputy Chief Halls presented down in Phoenix to the national conference. So there's a lot of interest in our model. Building's unique, the services are unique, the reduced use of force, reduced uses of presence of officers at non-criminal issues. The fact that they're on our radios, and we have that partnership. DC talked about it, and there's a huge level of trust between social service providers and law enforcement. And it's called a designated crisis responder. That's the person who go right in voluntary hold. And before this, you would just get whoever showed up, and they would say, "Yeah, I want that person held on a hold." And the officer's like, "I'm not seeing what you're seeing. I'm not going to put my hands on that individual for something I don't know is happening because we don't have that relationship." Versus now, and even though we don't use that tool very often, they know our designated crisis responder. They're in-house. We've actually trained a couple of them along the way. They started out as licensed clinicians, and now they've kind of gone up the chain up to them designated crisis responders, and then came back to our department. So we have those relationships, and it's like, okay, hey Rose, what's going on today? Okay, what's going on? Because they have a relationship with the individual. They know they're in crisis. They say this is the only way this is going to go. We got to get them in. Got to get them stabilized. Get them back on their course of care. Right? Okay, sounds like a plan. Let's make that happen. How we do what we need to do to get the person safely into custody and get into the stabilization point where they need to be. So it's those relationships that they're so much stronger and makes a much better delivery model and really these folks better outcomes.
I do have one other question. I'm sorry. What is your working relationship with the other police jurisdictions and the county sheriff department? Given your model and
Well, I can tell you the sheriff's department's adopting our model and
Okay.
they call it Scout because I call it not. They got to call it something different. That's okay.
Still does the same thing.
Yeah, Olympia uses a slightly different model. Familiar faces, and they call it crew. That's a different meaning over there, which is funny. It's the same acronym, but it's different meaning. It's funny. Their crew is actually civilian outreach workers. Their model is different because they're actually employees now and not contract services. That has a whole different dynamic of some things. And so it's just a different model, service model. And, I leave it to them to discuss their model for them.
I have a partial answer. They all want to come work for 2 years. Honestly, I was well, he knows it, but I went to the Thurston County building for a friend, and I was going through the x-ray thing, and the 2 officers there saw my badge, so they saw that I'm working with Lacey, and they told me, "Oh yeah, we have 2 colleagues, former coworkers who left us and are working with Lacey, and they are super happy, and now we all want to go and work at Lacey." So yeah, like it
got
works spreading.
good.
Yeah.
I have to confess, like 25, probably close to 30 years, I was stopped 3 times by Lacey police officer in 1 month. 3 times. They never gave me ticket.
What?
Education. Education. We do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that worked.
There you go.
I can tell you,
Did you cry?
So,
Thank you.
Chief Hollis.
Absolutely.
To us, we'll see you again. Sure.
Sounds good.
thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
Great evening.
Thank you for coming. I know that Commissioner Equity, wanted to learn a little bit more about what you all have been doing, and you presented previously, and they were really curious about the Mott and CRU and the 30 by 30 initiative. So we really appreciate the updates.
Yep, what's the timeline on the new building?
The new building should be completed by Q4 of next year.
Oh,
And we should be moving in probably Q1 of 26.
We need a tour.
Yes, we will make sure we
Yeah.
make that happen.
Yeah, sure. The Commission on Equity room, we have our own office.
Absolutely. Yeah. It'll be
Well,
great.
Commissioner, they will actually have a meeting space, so in the.
There you go.
Can arrange and all,
Off-site.
sites
Yeah.
from City Hall, still city sites.
And I'm sure it comes with hors d'oeuvres and all that.
keep going.
And we kind of kid about it, but problems that we identified. So Bob and DC Allison and I come from other agencies, right? So we came here, we saw the police station, like,
Okay.
it's in a hole. You gotta walk down into it. It's dark. It's not inviting. You really don't know it's there half the time, right? If you come to City Hall. And so it's like, police department's gotta be inviting. People need to have a sort of point of safety. They gotta know they're welcome. So that's really what we're striving for in the new building, right? Make sure, first thing you walk into
Bless you.
is a lobby adjacent to a community meeting space, right? That's the first thing you see when you get there, right? To show that that's our priority as a community, right? It's not, you walk into our lobby now and it's a hall of many doors.
TV, police department, gotta look intimidating.
Yeah, and there's like an interview room right off the thing and
With my kids. have been
fingerprint
in there.
machine. Yeah, and it's just, that's the idea. So, really, kudos to Deputy Chief Hollis. He is really, spearheading this project and getting where it needs to be. And so it is such a gift and a treasure for us to be able to do this in this community. I can't, say thank you enough to the city council for authorizing it and get us the funding for that. It's a huge commitment financially for the city. Obviously very much needed, but, it takes a lot of hands to make that live. So I really appreciate it. All right, folks. Well, I wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you. And you did work.
Sorry, moving on. Next.
That's right. I say
Good night.
Veronica Hand, we have a equity initiative update.
Thank you. Okay, for being here. I'm gonna do like a super high level, very quick summary of what I've been doing in the last 3 months. I know how much time do we have? 5 minutes maybe?
Yeah, well, the meeting has to adjourn by 8:30. So we are at 7:40, so got about 10 minutes, then questions answered, 15 minutes. Okay.
Good. Well, I just want to share with you some of the trainings that I've been taking and some of the activities that I've been doing, meetings and things like that. One of the trainings, the first training that I took, it's been with the Office of Equity, the State Office of Equity. They had a conference in June when I first joined the city, so I attended. This was a 2-day conference, and I just included a few of the topics and presentations that they gave. One that I found very interesting, it was the disability inclusion steps to take that make workspaces more inclusive and equitable. It's something that I think we can apply here. And also something that it wasn't, that it was very new to the state, and I'm guessing to the city, is the 4D model of neuro-inclusive communication. So I'm not going to go through all of them because you have them, but if you have any questions about any of them, please let me know. And I can share some of the resources or PowerPoint presentations. Another training with also the Office of Equity, they have something called the Equity Learning Series, and these are open to not just state employees, but also citizens. So in this case, if any of you would be interested, you could also let me know and I can tell you how to register or participate. This one, I chose this one because it was one of, they have like, they've done like 7 so far this year. But this one, I like that it was very practical. It was understanding equity on principle and practice. So I'm sharing that one. And then so these are actually, this was mostly, some of these were in person. This one building inclusive leaders. This was also super interested Dr. Ray Heslip. She's been training some athletes like for the Olympics and all that. So this training was at the South Puget Sound Community College, and she provided super practical tools that we could apply here. I also finished my ADA coordinator certificate, and now I'm certified. I did take the exam and everything. I passed it with 100%. About that. I've been collaborating with ICSCW, which is the Interagency Committee for State Employed Women. And they, for the first time, they organized an annual conference for professional development. And they, for the first time, allowed city employees to attend their conference too for free. It's all for free. So, and I think we're gonna have a bigger participation and more involvement next year. I also, the other one I wanted to mention, this one with APIC. It was a very good training that I attended last 2 weekends ago on how to.
That Right to Be organization, I've done some online training with them. I just have a vision of us doing something community-wide conversation, community-wide workshop, community-wide, something, and that.
Actually,
That
I
is
knew
one
about
of
them
those.
because you sent it to me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Just-
thank you for that.
Just how we talk to each other and how our biases come out.
Mhm. It's a very good organization. Okay. So in terms of meetings with community partners, I've been attending, so there's a community of practice that is formed by all state agencies, and now the cities are joining it too. And we're talking about language access issues, best practices, tools, helping each other, so depending that. We've been having meetings with the Thurston County and the City of Olympia on some projects. One of the projects we've been discussing is the 2025 Equity Summit that we want to organize. We've been meeting with the Women Voters League also, especially for the 2025 summit that we want to organize. I've been meeting other community members like the equity manager for SPSCC. I joined this DI Professionals Network who gathers at ASHA. It's going to be some of the activities that I've done.
Could you
Veronica,
Of course, I'm sorry.
sorry, you go first.
But
Equity Coalition of Thurston County, they made a presentation to us. And I asked the question trying to figure out their relationship to the equity commissions and task forces and groups that's going on. They're youthful in their origin and just getting up and running. Okay, where does that equity commission dovetail with other jurisdictions in the county that's working on equity?
So this is an initiative led by Doc Ma.
Yeah, Doug Ma.
So you know him, okay.
Yes.
So this is really his initiative, and he's been inviting all the community members working on equity and well, DEI to join. They have two components. One is members that pay a fee and they can attend trainings and things like that. The other one is the DEI Professionals Network through ASHO, and that one is free. And it's open to any community member. Actually, the meeting that I attended there were people who were just like citizens who saw the ad and wanted to join and participate. So that one is like very general, but I liked it because I met a lot of people that I had never seen in the equity arena before. So it's spreading and going further than the traditional people, agencies, or organizations.
So where do equity commissions like ours fit in?
So I haven't seen any equity commission like ours attend any of these meetings, but I have only attended two.
That's why I was curious about them. Are they a separate, something moving on in a different direction, and folk like us, you know, here in the city of Lacey, 6-year strategic plan and all this good stuff. But here's this other activity going on out there in the county that when they came and presented to us, I didn't get a clear understanding of their relationship to us either.
Yeah, I
know.
almost like
Jump in
the
here
same.
really quickly, commissioners. I think, you know, one of the things that we're trying to explore is where we could have some partnerships and some overlaps here moving forward. The Equity Coalition, like Veronica already mentioned, it's a much wider group. You know, we're talking about the Commission on Equity here.
That's what I'm.
This is appointed, you know, by the city council. Olympia has a similar group appointed by the city council, and their, you know, focus is established by, you know, the ordinances for what they're looking at, right? So we have our ordinance 1581, which gives us kind of the purview for this group. And so with the Thurston County Equity Coalition, it is much broader. You have, you know, representatives from jurisdictions. So like Veronica was mentioning, starting to attend some of those meetings. You also have representatives from you know, the business community, the nonprofit, healthcare communities, educations. And so I think it's starting as a group of saying like, hey, what's going on across the board? And that's where we want to know, like, what might we be able to partner with in the future as we start to look at something like the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Summit, where our whole concept is very similar of like, how do we get cross communication across a variety of sectors? And so we're really exploring that relationship right now. So I know it's not a concrete answer, but like we're saying, hey, we're all interested. We want to know and work towards what can we work towards together? What does that look like?
Join forces.
Yeah, I was just concerned after they came and we discussed that it wasn't a clear answer as to where equity commissions like us fit in. We aren't professionals, we aren't paid employees, we're pure volunteers. And, you know, they identify the affinity groups, and which of those affinity groups include us. Well, you all can be a part of anyone you feel comfortable with. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
the folks like us that's been out there doing this work, it's just, you know,
Yeah.
weren't
it's almost like
represented
you
there.
don't want
I
them
didn't
to-
feel good about it at all. You know, I see the need for, you know, cross jurisdictional conversations and stuff. But as those conversations have taken place, it didn't appear to me as though that they had considered the equity groups and work that was already underway and taking place. So I'm still searching for a comfortable explanation of where we fit in.
I have a little feeling that, you know, we're appointed, the city council said, this is important, we're doing our work, Foley's doing their work, Thurston County's doing their work, and they're like, well, I'm the DEI of of this college. Well, I'm the DEI person of this business.
The
We
hospital.
need to do some stuff too. We need to get it rolling in the whole community. So I think we're kind of inspirational to them, and we can partner with them like Shannon said, and we need to get our message, some message out broadly. They can help do that. If they need to get us some questions answered or some help and direction, we can help them.
Yeah, because that way it just seems like double work if everybody's working on the same thing, but all separate, I mean.
That's again, one of the reason why we want to have that
Summit,
summit is to
yeah.
say like, hey, how can we align some of our efforts? How can we not recreate the wheels? How
Yeah.
can we learn from each
Here's the
other?
best practices that we've had. This is what we found out. This is what we were working on. Yeah, for sure. That DEI professional network one at a show, I think I have that on my calendar because they do that monthly, right?
Yes.
So, and I think the next one's coming up on the 2nd of November. Yeah, I plan on going to that one. There's also a retreat. It's not through them. It's something that's coming up in March. Maybe I could talk a little bit about that. I gotta find out more information, but I don't think it has anything to do with DEI, but yeah, I wanted to make sure that that DEI network one was the same one that I have on my calendar. I'll be going to next week.
These workshops and
Yeah.
things that are happening are really great for us to plug in and get more. Yes, if we don't have this enough meetings already.
But we can't go if we don't know.
Yes.
Yeah.
If we aren't included on those distribution lists and stuff. The trainings, the retreats, whatever. We've learned a lot in 3 years.
Yeah,
As the Lacey Commission. And we're willing to share.
yeah.
We haven't been perfect. We've made some mistakes. Let's save them the trouble of stepping in the same pothole. That's where the real sharing comes in.
Mhm.
So I think it's either we can invite ourselves in or have them offer what we know. Like they came and kind of introduced themselves to us, kind of left it at that without really suggesting next step, whether they didn't say like, we really want you to come with us or we want to learn from you, none of that. They just came and introduced, we're doing this and that's about it. But I think if we see the value of partnering or, then we need to either invite ourselves in and let them know, hey, we're interested in learning more about what you do, and this is what we do. Let's kind of do this. So I think we may just offer that up.
But I will say, Commissioner Sauer, that is kind of what we're doing right now. So, Veronica, like she mentioned, has been attending some of these meetings, and we're starting the planning of that summit with the idea that we can hopefully build those relationships and those capacities so that we can have more cross sharing of information, like things that are going on in the community that, maybe you all might want to attend in the future. So I think we're starting those discussions, and we hope to bring forward updates to you in the future.
Thank you.
Scroll.
Yeah, but I was doing, but I clicked on you. Okay, so I've been also meeting with some of the state agencies, trying to learn from them as well, best practices. One of the things that, you've seen the projects that we're working on. But some of the most important ones, I wanted to see with the Office of Equity, I met with Megan Matthews, the director. I wanted to see, because their mandate is statewide, how they could work with us and support us, if they had any tools or anything that we could benefit from or collaboration. And right now they told me that because they are only, there were 34, their staff is very limited, it's only 34 people serving the whole state. They're focusing mostly on state agencies, serving state agencies. Not so much the cities, but if we had a specific request or project, or we needed them to attend one of our events, we could reach out to them and they would consider it. In terms of meetings that I've had internally. Well, I've been having weekly meetings with our city manager. I met with all the directors when I first started working here. Been having these meetings. We've been having meetings to plan we had some meetings for the strategic plan. I've been meeting with the different departments working on the ADA to see how we can stay in compliance. We've been working on the 2025 Equity Summit, little by little. I've attended a few meetings from departments like economic development, their whole staff meeting and economic development. And in terms of our ongoing work, I'm working on, we're working on the equity project planning, see what we're gonna do, how we're gonna implement it, where we're gonna take the city. And we're working on the employee engagement survey. This is a survey that we want all our staff, or at least my goal is 70% of our staff to take. It's just to see where we're at, what's the engagement and what we're missing, where do we want to go and how we're gonna take our staff there.
We'll talk about experience of bias and
Yeah, So this is very holistic. So it's not just focused on equity and inclusion, it's everything related employment. So we're thinking about between 40, 50 questions. We're doing it in collaboration with all our directors, all our departments. And we're gonna have 7 topics that we have selected. And some of the questions, maybe equity and inclusion, we have probably 3, 4 questions, but others are about belonging or resources, professional development, things like that. Leadership, they are interacting with the leadership, they feel supported, things like that. Also working on the language access plan and implementing some improvements. We're developing the equity training curriculum planning it to implement it for our staff and leadership.
So to keep interrupting. So do we have any equity training now? Any diversity training now that bias training?
Not right now,
in
not
current-
yet.
For current employees?
Jump in there a little bit. So if you all actually take a look at the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging strategic plan, when we did the benchmarks, there are some that talk about trainings that we have done in the past. We don't have the curriculum mapped out as of right now, but we have done trainings previously, like implicit bias trainings, hiring practice trainings. And so there are a couple of trainings that some of our staff have taken. However, it's not a curriculum that repeats at this point in time, and that's what we're looking at, of like, how do we establish something that is more comprehensive and you onboard onto the city, there's a plan for having a shared understanding.
Yeah.
And then our communications department is also working on a branding guide. I think it'll be ready in a month, right? Shelby?
So we'll be taking a look at that actually at our next Commission on Equity meeting, is the draft of our branding guide for the city. And the purpose of this is to try to create a more comprehensive look and feel to city communications that move out. So you all will be receiving that presentation on November 25th.
Yeah, I need to see very component of how to, the images especially that are going to be used that follow equity standards. And also another thing we've been working is the 2025 VIP Summit.
So I have a question about that summit. Have you established objectives ready? Do you have an outline of kind of what approach you're gonna take, what you want to accomplish? And, because I think we should have some input into that once you look at, this is what we hope to accomplish and this is the path we want to take. If we could, kind of weigh in on it on the front end versus saying, oh, here's what we're gonna do, the summit, this is what it's gonna involve, we'll see you there.
And okay.
Because it's part of our plan.
So far, Shannon and I met and we developed a list of potential partners, collaborators. And we've been meeting with some of them, Shannon created a document where they're uploading information, suggestions, and all of that. We probably should then share it with them as well, or.
So yeah, so what we've done so far, commissioners, we've met with some of our partners, starting with the League of Women Voters, because we do want to acknowledge that they were really important in starting this process, going back to making sure you get individuals, and bring them in as key stakeholders. And so it started with conversations with some of the league representatives of saying, hey, we really liked what you did to get all of the jurisdictions together at the table, talking about what was going on. How can we expand this so that we can include more community members, more community organizations? What could that look like? And so your question, Commissioner, of how this commission will be involved, I can say we'll be coming back to you in the future as we continue to go through this process. What we've done is we've established just a couple of partners from various kind of organizations across Thurston County and started going through like, what could this look like? And so we've just got a draft of ideas, but we are going to be back before this board with more information over the next couple of months. But right now we're looking for spring 2025 to hold it. So we do know it's coming quickly, but we still have a couple of months and we look forward to future conversations with you all on it.
Yeah, I just don't want to attend a summit where I got a bunch of high-level people, smart people just preaching to me. No.
I will say, Commission on Equity members, I'm sure you all will be roles too, where you will be some of the mentors of information, so.
Is this the city of Lacey is hosting or this broad coalition? I mean, this
No,
partnerships or.
It's partnerships, but it's gonna be at the Washington Center, right?
Oh, that's
Providing the
what I
venue.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really want this to be a coalition, right? We want this to be partners are coming to help us and help us all collectively. We don't want it to be one single organization that's putting on, but we're happy to start that process of making sure that resources and that we keep moving the momentum towards creating this.
On leadership.
That's all I have for you. I don't know if you have any other questions.
Peace and love.
Love.
That's from the 60s.
But that's forever. That's just the 60.
I just saw the word belonging missing out of that.
Yeah, I was looking for that, like an image that had it. I couldn't find an image that had it.
Need a graphics person to
Like
create.
I said, love it includes belonging.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner's report. Do we wanna? Let's see, maybe John, are you with us? Maybe you would, Commissioner Hedgewood, would you like to give us a short report on the parks? Parks cleaning, no, parks. What's your thing
Improvement
called?
funding work group.
Permanent funding work group. Sorry, you weren't actually on the thing. I might have surprised you. Yeah, he had a meeting just in the other room, so. Any other commissioner reports or?
So, next month is, it's November. Oh, okay. I won't be able to, I won't be able to make December meeting. Are we going to meet in December or can we entertain the idea of having December off to celebrate the season?
Look at your,
That's November
you
30th.
got a meeting scheduled.
We already have,
Look at you, December 30.
December 30th?
So one of the things we had decided with the work plan back in, when we
Okay.
adopted the 2024 work plan was to push out the December meeting just due to, it being probably the
Okay.
busiest time of the year for most folks, so.
Rather than the 20.
Oh, I still have one.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well then that's out of the way, out of the question, okay.
And it's okay if you need to miss one, that's okay.
Yeah, I
As long
will
as
try
we
my
have
best
the-
to make it, but it's possible that I may not.
As long as we have a quorum to act. Any other?
Hey, Trickley. How's it going, folks?
There we go.
Hey.
Would you like to
Oh.
talk to us about your committee?
Yeah, so I'm on the Parks Improvement Funding Work Group. It's a bit of a mouthful. That's where I've been the last 2 meetings now because we've been having them at the same time as our commission meeting, which is always great. I've been explicitly asking Shen, like, should I go to this one or that one? Anyhow, today and our last meeting, we were specifically going over different parks improvement projects and replacement projects for the city. Kind of going over the budgetary items and specifically their line item cost. For those that aren't tracking, we have stuff that goes from about $10,000 up to $13 million, and everything in between. So it's pretty expansive. Anyhow, we did a tour of the different parks that are subject in this new work group for our funding plan going forward, and that are subject to it, as well as kind of diving in further into what those projects look like that are in like undeveloped areas. Like next to Nisqually Middle School, for example, is one of the many locations, or by the train depot is another one. Are both projects that are in our work group plan. Tonight's meeting was specifically us breaking out into smaller groups to discuss kind of prioritization of these projects, and specifically for the commission's information, my recommendations for the priority order. The precedence is in underserved areas of the community as well as affordability. And then we're kind of moving on from that to the Virgil S. Clark Senior Center, specifically their phase 3 development and their parking lot expansion. For those that aren't familiar, it's the place next to the community center in Woodland Park. They're trying to add an additional building and parking lot area. We own property adjacent to the existing senior center that we're trying to expand out to. And as of course, as y'all know, we did our senior and all abilities full community forum at that location. And then additionally, spray parks were number 3, just because of our, we did some polling in the city and that was one of the highest wanted amenities, as it were, that we do not currently own or have in the city. And then there's 4 different proposed spray parks in the city, location wise, and again, advocating for ones that are more centrally located and in underserved areas as well. So just let you guys kind of get an update on where we're at with that. That's, I guess, a quick snapshot of the work that's been happening there.
Great work.
Great. Today, when the chief and deputy chief were here, they talked about giving homeless people their a phone and not having a place to charge it. And I think, just in parks, it would be great to have little charging stations for phones. Even moms and dads who are in their phone is dying, that they, I don't see that.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. They have
Electrical
like charging
outlet.
lockers at like the high schools in the area. That might be something maybe we can incorporate, and for public use as well.
Yeah.
Potentially. That's a great suggestion, Chair. Thanks.
Right, Laura? Thank you, John.
Yep.
Now moving on to the director's report. Shannon?
Hey, Commission, I've got 2 reports for you. And the first one is that we have a couple advisory board vacancies, including one on this board that I just wanted to let you all know about. So former Commissioner Christine Stolberg did send in a letter of resignation. And I did send out the incredibly kind words that she sent for all of you to take a look at. And so we are going to be recruiting to fill the remaining term of her position, which is for 1 additional year. So it would extend to December 2025. We also have a planning commission, a couple of vacancies on the planning commission available right now. And so what I wanted to show you all just really quickly is where you can find that information. So if you wanted to pass it on to anybody who may be interested, and anybody who is watching can also tune in and find out. You also have the link in the emails I sent you as well. So you can access both of the press releases that we did for that, as well as the links to go to our advisory boards. We're also pushing this out on our social media accounts as well, hoping to get as big and broad of a reach as we possibly can get for these positions. Just really quickly, if you go to our city's webpage, which is the cityoflacey.org, you can go to a couple of places to learn this information. So the first one I just want to point out is our latest news does talk about us seeking a Commission on Equity member. So you could click this link and learn more. It also talks about the city seeking planning commissioners, and as well as some of the surveys that we'll go over. So if you do click on the link, you can find more information about what we're looking for, what the Commission on Equity is, and then how to submit an online application. We are currently going through the process of looking at our advisory board application process from start to finish. So we don't have any updates right now at this point, but we do hope in the future to be coming back in front of this group to talk about ways that we might be able to remove barriers to applicants in the future. But you can see that you can fill out this advisory board application online and submit it. And the city will receive it. We are doing a vacancy open until filled, and our first review is going to occur in 30 days. And so this was posted last week, and so we will be reviewing those applications towards the end of November. So if you know of anybody who might be interested, please forward out this information.
Do you have another way to apply for it other than online, or is it just strictly online? Like they can't come in and inquire or anything like that?
We have it online right now, but if somebody did want to come in, we could certainly get a paper application for them to fill out.
Got it, got it.
You do need to submit other materials though right now as part of your application.
Mhm.
So including kind of a letter of interest and a cover letter. And these are the things that we want to look at as part of the application process to see if we need to continue to do it in the same way that we've done it previously.
Okay.
The other way that you can access this information is by going up to government and going to advisory boards. And this talks a lot about the advisory board programs at the city, about the stipend program, which all of these positions would be eligible for the stipend program. And then are you interested in taking an active role in Lacey City government? And you can go and fill out the application there as well. It takes you to the same application link that I just sent you. So we are looking for these members now, and so time is important, and we'd love to get this fully staffed. So please, if you have friends, colleagues, peers, neighbors who may be interested.
He's
Please,
returned in December. I'm gonna talk to him again.
you know, that lines up pretty well.
I
So
know.
please reach out to everyone and anyone who may have an interest. If there's no questions on that, I will move to the second item. And that is our city surveys. We have a number of really important city surveys that are out right now that I just wanted to take the time to highlight and also show where you can find them on the website. I've sent you all the links as well, so you can put those on to friends, peers, colleagues, neighbors over the internet as well. But you can see right here up at the top, we are advertising for our comprehensive plan survey. So right away, you can click this link and it'll take you to that survey where you can fill out directly the information on what you want to see our community look, feel, and be in the next 20 years. This is one of the most important policy documents that we create as a city. And so we really want community members to take this survey. So we're trying to get that information out as broad as possible. You can also find out more about this survey also in our latest news. If you go back a bit, you can access more news by hitting all news, and it'll bring you up to previous press releases that we have done on this survey in particular. We're pushing this survey and all of the rest of the surveys out on, again, social media. We've done press releases. Pretty soon, we're going to be releasing a couple of short videos also that explain what the comprehensive plan is and how you can get involved in the process.
How long will the comprehensive plan survey be? Does it have a deadline?
That is an excellent question. And I know it's going to be up for some time. I
Okay.
will confirm when they're closing it, but my understanding was close to the end of the year. So I can get you that
Okay.
date and send it out to you. The one survey that is getting kind of close to being closed is our human needs assessment survey, which I know you all remember Michelle Chavez came here and talked about what the human needs assessment was and why we're trying to collect more information from the community. We did extend this survey out to November 8th. And that was because we got translations into Spanish and then also Korean. Thank you, Commissioner Sauer and Veronica, to help us get these surveys up online. And so we wanted to add a couple of additional weeks so that community members could take the survey in all 3 languages. So that is still up and accessible for everyone.
We posted that one on our church bulletin with that link. Pastor emphasized it. You know, the cards we had, so hopefully folk follow through that human service needs assessment. We emphasize the need, you know.
We appreciate getting the word out.
I don't know how many follow through, but they can't say they didn't know and didn't have the information.
We certainly appreciate it. And then the final survey that we have open, and I've sent you all the link for this one as well, and that is for our middle housing survey. So I know Jennifer Adams, our housing coordinator, was here tonight. This is one of the projects that she came and talked to you all about. I believe it was around February, March of this past year, about how we were looking to understand in our community what kind of middle housing options that the community members really wanted. And so we have a survey. She's been doing outreach in the community as well. And at a future date, we'll likely be back in front of this board to talk a little bit about the information that she found. But you can take this survey on helping the city decide what types of housing to allow. And so the survey is also found on the middle housing webpage, which provides just a lot more information. This is very similar to what Jennifer went over when she came and presented, but on what is middle housing and what could be those missing middle options. And so you can take this survey in multiple locations by clicking on any of those links as well. So we have a lot of surveys out, but it's really important that we get as much feedback as we possibly can. And so if there's any individuals that you may know, please pass this on.
That one is a really interesting one. I did that where you can place in the city map where you want different things to be and where you think the expansion should be or middle housing should be. And it's kind of fascinating.
And I think that was the comprehensive plan survey. Yeah, and that's
this one.
it's really engaging. There's maps and you have to allocate
right.
certain amounts of housing across the city. It's
Okay.
yeah. No,
Took that one.
take them all. Take them all. And then commissioners, I've got one more item, and I just wanted to go back to our Lacey Youth Council member and maybe just do a little introduction and hear from the council member who's joining us today.
Well, my name's Kieran, she, her pronouns. I am a student at Summit Virtual Academy. That's an online school. So it's basically, you do school at home. It's pretty cool. I'm also a student at Newmarket. So by the time I graduate next year, I'll have graduated with my cosmetology license. So straight into a job from there. I wanted to join Commission on Equity because I think advocacy is a very important thing. My main advocating thing that I might want to do for a job is drug and alcohol addiction. I think there's a lot of people don't really understand how people get into addiction and the brain. I'm losing the word, and I think it'd be really helpful to the community if we put more out there on, how drug addiction comes to be, how we can better support people, and all that stuff.
Awesome.
Well, welcome.
Welcome.
Yeah,
Good questions.
yeah, good. Excited to have your voice here.
Me too.
Yeah.
Chair, that is the end of my report.
Okay, well, any other business? You have any other people? No?
A question occurred to me after the discussion that Veronica just led. Of all those partners and all those entities, I didn't see school districts. K-12 school districts.
Right.
It's a huge equity entity out there. I did not see, it just dawned on me, I
Yeah.
did not see school districts. And over the 3 years, we've talked a lot about the equity issue in K-12 education. And so as you are interacting with
Yeah,
your
thank you.
counterparts, we can't have an equitable community if we don't have equitable schools. I keep saying it.
Thank you for bringing it to our
You
attention.
just, yeah, thank you.
Well, we are. Good work, kids. We are going to adjourn the meeting at 8:19.
Wow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good job. Thanks.